My boss's wife is young, beautiful, and elegant. I work as my boss's driver, but as fate would have it, an opportunity fell into my lap. However, things didn't turn out to be as simple as I had imagined, until one day. Chapter 1, Unbelievable. I never dreamed that I would ever have a secret affair with my beautiful boss's wife, drawing us down a path from which there was no turning back. Here's how it all happened. My boss, Lee Yongcheong, is a wealthy businessman, and I am his personal driver. It's not that a former Special Forces soldier like me has fallen to such a position, rather, I owe him a debt of gratitude. Today, as he was wrapping up his work for the day, he called me into his office and told me something that left me both troubled and strangely excited. At the time, his face was grim, which made it clear that he was facing a difficult situation. After a long silence, he finally spoke. Han Ming, to be honest, my father has been diagnosed with late-stage cancer. The one thing that still weighs on him is that, after 7 years of marriage, I still don't have a child. I was puzzled. Well, why don't you and your wife just try for one? I thought. What did this have to do with me, and why was he telling me all this? He sighed heavily. If only it were that simple, he replied with a pained expression. I immediately understood that something was amiss. Boss, while I don't fully understand, one thing is certain: if you need me to do something, I won't hesitate to help. My sense of honor compelled me to step up, even if he asked something outrageous, as long as it was within my power. After all, he always treated me well. Good, I knew I could count on you, he said, standing up to pat my shoulder. Now is the time for you to step up for me. I stared at him in confusion, unsure of what to say. As his private driver, I knew better than to ask questions. He would share details when he was ready. Seeing my puzzled expression, he gave my shoulder a firm pat and said with a determined look, Han Ming, if you're truly a friend, then do me a big favor tonight. All right, boss. Just tell me what to do, I replied earnestly. Tonight, I want you to be with my wife. Huh? I barely understood what he meant. Don't pretend not to get it, he snapped, tapping the back of my head. Do you think my wife is beautiful enough? Attractive enough? I nodded, bewildered. Don't deny it, he said with a hint of pride. Any man on this planet would feel tempted around her. I still didn't understand his intentions. Boss, just be direct. You know I'm not the type to beat around the bush. He gave me a hard look. You still don't get it. He hit the back of my neck again. I'm asking you to sleep with her, understand? What? I stared at him, dumbfounded. What's the matter? Do you not find her attractive? He asked, starting to get irritated. No, it's not that. She's beautiful, of course, I'm drawn to her. I just halfway through, I court myself. I mean, no, I wouldn't dream of having improper thoughts about her. The truth is, my boss's wife is like a goddess, a rare beauty with a remarkable grace. It's no surprise she's from a prestigious family. She's simply different from other women. In my heart, she was the kind of woman you could only admire from afar. Come on, stop being coy. That's not like you, he said impatiently. Just say it, will you help me or not? My heart raced. I could handle any other request, but this one left me unsure. What was he playing at? Boss, are you serious? Or are you testing me? You know how loyal I am to you, so there's no need for such a test, I said, trying to deflect. Do I look like I'm joking? He asked, looking dead serious. Why? I blurted out. He sighed and dropped his head. To be honest, I can't do it. What? You can't? I was taken aback. Boss, you're kidding, right? If that's the case, how could I still hear such sounds from your room at night? For convenience, I stayed in the guest room at his house. You were eavesdropping. He shot me a look. No, boss. It's just that you and your wife were a bit loud, I explained hastily. He gritted his teeth, trying to hold back his anger. It's not that I'm physically incapable, it's that, well, my seed isn't viable. Really? How could that be? I was stunned. It is what it is, he said firmly. So, will you help me or not? I need my wife to get pregnant soon. This left me trapped. I knew exactly what he meant. If I refused, he'd find someone else to make this happen. Boss, anything else, no problem. But this I couldn't bring myself to agree so readily, yet I didn't want to see someone else fulfill his wish. Stop hesitating. This is the ultimate test of your loyalty. If you agree, I'll make sure you're rewarded, he said with a fiery look in his eyes. I wavered. Normally, I would have refused. But now, a new thought arose: fulfill this task for him, then resign, ending my obligation to him. After all, I wanted more than just being someone else's driver. I had my own ambitions. I wanted to start my own business. One day, with enough money, I pave an asphalt road for my village. When I was 11, my mother fell ill. With no road into our village, we couldn't get her to the hospital in time, and she passed away. That year, I became an orphan. It was the village chief who gave me a spot in the army, which brought me to where I am today. So, I swore I'd one day build a proper road for my hometown. All right, boss. I'll do it, I finally said, resolving to carry out this task and then leave his service. Good, that's the spirit. Tonight, we begin, he said, finally breathing a sigh of relief. Tonight? I was startled, even though I had agreed. The blessing seemed to come too soon. Even I wasn't immune to my goddess-like boss's wife. Yes. I've calculated everything. These next few days are her optimal time to conceive, he said with a glint in his eye. Then what should I do? I asked, wondering what he had planned. After all, I knew his wife's pride and aloofness weren't qualities any man could easily overcome, especially after 7 childless years. I have it all arranged. All you need to do is be ready. Leave the rest to me, he said with confidence. Chapter 2, A Lifeline. My sister-in-law wrapped herself even tighter in the sheets and backed away. Did you hear me? Get out of here now. Sister-in-law, please let me explain. I instinctively made a last attempt to plead. I don't want to hear it. Just get out now. Her anger hadn't diminished one bit. If you don't leave right now, I'll scream. Please don't yell. I'm leaving. I'll go. I was utterly dejected. Dragging myself off the bed, I hung my head and started towards the door. Wait. Her voice stopped me in my tracks. Startled, a spark of hope ignited in me, and I turned back. Sister-in-law. Come here, she said with a look of resentment in her eyes. Sister-in-law. I looked at her, feeling completely bewildered, unsure of what she intended to do with me. Don't just stand there, come here and sit down, she ordered, motioning to the edge of the bed with her eyes. Nervously, I sat down, and the moment I lifted my head, she cut in sharply, behave yourself. Listen carefully. If you want to keep your life, you better answer my questions honestly. I felt like I'd found a lifeline, nodding quickly. Sister-in-law, please, be merciful. Don't hold a grudge against me. Save it. I'll ask, and you'll answer. Understand? And remember, keep your eyes to yourself, and no more thoughts like that, she commanded with a tone that left no room for negotiation. Yes, sister-in-law. Ask whatever you need, I'll answer honestly, I assured her, more focused on saving myself than anything else. She shifted slightly to sit more comfortably. Now, tell me what's this all about? What do you mean? Her question threw me off, leaving me momentarily unsure of how to respond. Don't play dumb, she scoffed, giving a stern look. I wouldn't dare, I said, waving my hands. Then start talking, she demanded, glaring at me. Did you sneak in here on your own to try and take advantage of me, or was it? Sister-in-law, I wouldn't dare do such a thing on my own. I quickly defended myself. Then someone put you up to this. Her gaze turned a little more calculating. Well, at the critical moment, I hesitated. No matter what, I didn't want to betray my boss. Well, what? She pushed, suddenly extending a graceful leg to give me a firm kick. If you want to talk, then get out now. But you know what that LL mean. Facing her pressure, and realizing I couldn't protect the boss from this, I bit my lip and nodded heavily. Yes, it was the boss who asked me to come. A smirk touched her lips. I thought as much. Sister-in-law, he has his reasons, I muttered, slipping up in my haste. Reasons? She latched onto my slip. Explain, what kind of reasons does he have? And why would he tell you instead of coming to me? That, I immediately regretted my words. The boss had strictly forbidden me from revealing his condition. Spit it out, she snapped. I had no choice but to brace myself and reveal everything about the boss's plan. The switch and bait scheme meant to help her conceive. After learning the truth, she seemed to zone out, remaining silent for a long time. I didn't dare to speak either, afraid that saying the wrong thing would provoke her. So much for all that bond of 100 days nonsense. Turns out I'm just a tool, she muttered to herself. HMPH, just for his father's lousy inheritance, he's willing to sacrifice even me. Sister-in-law, he's desperate. I attempted to speak up for him, hoping to soothe her. Quiet, she shouted, her voice a harsh command. The shout jolted me so badly I instinctively moved forward, covering her lips with my hand. After all, the boss was just outside the door. MMPH, she shook her head, raising her hands to push my hand away. This only made things worse. The bedsheet slipped, leaving me in unobstructed view. Smack! A sudden sting on my cheek jolted me as her hand connected. Sister-in-law, you're misunderstanding. I didn't mean anything by it, I stammered, clutching my cheek. Smack! Her other hand landed on my other cheek, though with a little less force than the first. Really? No intentions at all. Her glare softened slightly. Really, I swear. I won't think anything improper again, I said, my voice genuinely pleading. HMPH. She let out a heavy scoff. You've already seen everything and touched me, yet now you claim to have no interest. Am I not beautiful enough for you? Well, I was entirely dumbfounded. What else with all the hemming and hawing? Let me ask you, do you think I'm beautiful? I nodded vigorously, still holding my face. Then how could you have no interest in me? She pressed on. It's not that, sister-in-law. I do have feelings, I admitted truthfully. All right then, she said firmly, I'll give you a chance, but on 2 conditions. It was as if I'd just won the lottery. I accept. Not just 2 conditions, name 100, and I'd still agree. Don't rush. I need you to take my conditions seriously, she replied, looking grave. Of course, sister-in-law. I swear if I don't keep my word, let lightning strike me down, I said, not knowing how else to convey my sincerity. Chapter 3, Sweet as Honey. I hesitated, frowning slightly, and told her, Sis-in-law, it's not that I don't want to go back early. But on my way to work today, I noticed the boss looked unusually upset. I'm afraid he might suspect something. Honestly, who wouldn't he want to get back early if they could? She nodded slightly. You're right. It's best to be cautious. He has always been suspicious. I'm really glad you understand, I said, sincerely admiring her perceptiveness. She waved her hand dismissively. I know him too well. Even though he was the one who came up with the plan to have you approach me, deep down, he probably resents you for it. Looks like my days of peace are over. I sighed deeply. With a serious expression, she assured me, don't worry. As long as I'm here, you'll be fine. I felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, sis-in-law. Enough with the thanks. Are you treating me like a stranger? She seemed slightly annoyed. Relax. As long as he doesn't find out about us, he won't do anything. Yes, I trust you, I nodded earnestly. All right, then. I'll hang up now. See you tonight. She smiled sweetly, waved at the screen, and ended the video call. Her smile lingered in my mind, filling me with a powerful surge of emotions. At the same time, I pondered another question: women are such mysterious beings. Before we had any connection, she seemed so aloof and unapproachable. But now, she transformed, becoming warm and welcoming. I couldn't help but remember last night, how she was hesitant and shy at first. But later, she let go, responding to me in ways I hadn't expected. Lost in my thoughts, a driver entered the room with a large bag of goods, excitedly shouting to everyone, hurry up. There's a new supermarket across the street with grand opening deals. I bolted up and ran for the door without a second thought. Hey, take it easy. There's plenty of stuff, the driver called after me, laughing. Outside, I sprinted toward the nearby pharmacy. I nearly forgot the crucial errand. I couldn't help but feel grateful to that driver. Without his random reminder, I might have completely overlooked it. The rest of the workday felt like torture, each minute dragging painfully as I waited to be done. Finally, the clock struck quitting time. I waited an extra 5 minutes to avoid suspicion before texting the boss, if there's nothing else, I'll go pick up sis-in-law now. He replied instantly, what are you still doing here? Go pick her up already. Grinning, I replied, on my way now. I knew exactly what he was thinking. With practiced speed, I arrived at his house 10 minutes faster than usual. She was waiting at the door, having already received my message. Today, she wore a blue one-piece dress, which accentuated her graceful figure and refined elegance. She looked like she could be 18 again. You look stunning, I said as she opened the door. She smiled sweetly. Oh, stop it. I'm getting old. I shook my head. I mean it. Watching her settle into the back seat, I couldn't help but ask, why not sit up front? With a small smile, she replied, better to stick to the rules. Who knows if Lee Yoncheong might be watching? You're smart as always, I nodded, admiring her foresight. Since we weren't in a rush to the airport, I drove slowly, occasionally stealing glances at her in the rearview mirror. Each shared glance made my heart race a little faster. Keep your eyes on the road, she scolded playfully, noticing my glances. I chuckled, you're just so captivating. She scoffed, haven't you ever seen a beautiful woman before? Gazing out the window, she added, and I'll warn you now, the person you're picking up is a stunning beauty herself. Try to keep yourself in check. Without missing a beat, I said, no one is as beautiful to me as you are. She laughed, seeming genuinely pleased. You men really know how to flatter. I smiled back. I'm just being honest. Millimeter, I believe you. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, then asked, did you get the medicine I asked for? Yes, I got it. I felt a wave of relief. Good. Hand it over. She leaned forward, reaching out. I took the medicine out and placed it in her hand, my fingers lingering on hers briefly. She didn't pull away, just gave a sweet smile. There will be plenty of time for that later. Just focus on driving. I laughed, feeling overjoyed. I knew I had found someone truly special. Sure enough, when we picked up her friend, I was taken aback. She was strikingly beautiful tall, with a graceful figure and flowing hair, the picture of elegance. After helping with the luggage, I returned to the car, barely seated when her friend in the back teased, hey, Tian Yuan, this driver of yours is quite handsome. Chapter 4, Arousing Suspicion. My sister-in-law's face tightened. Stop it, Lu Ping. Don't talk nonsense. He's just Lao Li's driver. Lu Ping looked as if she'd discovered a new continent. Really? If you don't mind, how about lending him to me while I'm here for a couple of days? I was genuinely surprised at how direct my sister-in-law's friend was, bold from the very first meeting. My sister-in-law glanced over at me and raised her brows as if to tell me not to respond. Lu Ping laughed, you're still the same as ever. You have these opportunities, and you don't take advantage of them. Talk about self-restraint. My sister-in-law blushed. Could you tone it down a bit? You're like a starving ghost. Starving ghost. Lu Ping's excitement only grew. That's right, you've hit the nail on the head. You know how Lao Wang is these days. He's barely able to keep up, it's only every 3 or 4 months now. He can't satisfy me, and he watches me like a hawk, terrified I'll slip up. So how did you manage to get out here this time? My sister-in-law asked curiously. Pfft. Lu Ping rolled her eyes. Like he'd let me come willingly. Huh. My sister-in-law tilted her head, puzzled. He's here on business, so I used that to persuade him, Lu Ping said with obvious pride. If it weren't for having you here as my friend, there is no way he would have brought me along. So you're here because of me, my sister-in-law's mouth formed an O of understanding. Exactly. Lu Ping's mood instantly brightened. So be a true friend and ask Lao Li if this handsome driver here can accompany us while I'm around. My goodness, I nearly rear-ended the car in front of me. That was too straightforward. All right, my sister-in-law agreed readily, but if anyone is asking Lao Li, it has to be you. You know his personality better than I do. He listens to you more than he listens to me. I could immediately understand her thinking this was her way of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Smart woman. Fine, I'll ask him. He won't have a choice. Lu Ping spoke with complete confidence, unaware of my sister-in-law's careful planning. Sure enough, that evening, Lu Ping waited until my boss returned home. She told him about it and managed to convince him to agree, only then happily retreating to bed with my sister-in-law. Later that night, after I showered and prepared for bed, my boss entered my room without knocking. Startled, I asked, "Boss, do you need something? Are we heading out?" "Heading out this late?" he replied, clearly displeased. "Oh," I was confused. "I can't sleep, so I thought I'd hang out here for a bit," he said, plopping down on my bed. "Okay," I replied, quickly getting up. "Boss, let me make you some tea." "No need," he waved a hand dismissively. "By the way, I just remembered, could you bring up those 2 recordings? I want to review them." Damn. As I feared, he was indeed suspicious. "I deleted them," I replied without hesitation. "You what?" My boss scowled. "I felt it was unsafe to keep them," I explained calmly. "If she finds out about those recordings, then what?" "Good point," he said, somewhat appeased. He stood up to leave but turned back at the door. "Tomorrow, bring your computer's main unit. I want to see if I can recover them." "Wow, that's ruthless." "Understood, boss," I replied respectfully, though I was stunned by his level of suspicion. He had almost left the room when he paused, then returned, frowning. "Actually, let me take it now. I can't sleep anyway, I'll tinker with it for a while." It was clear he was openly suspicious of me now. "Sure, boss, let me carry it over to your room," I offered without hesitation. "No need. I've got it." He didn't even look away from the computer, as if afraid I'd tamper with it. Watching him awkwardly lug the heavy main unit back to his room, I couldn't help but smirk. Thank heavens I'd thought ahead and deleted the recordings. I was confident no one, not even a professional, would be able to recover them. After locking my door, I lay down and slept peacefully, feeling secure in my foresight. The next morning, at breakfast, my boss, dark circles under his eyes, told me, "Xiao Han, drop me off at the office first, then come back to pick up your sister-in-law and Lu Ping. For the next few days, focus on accompanying them." "Understood, boss," I said, quickly finishing my meal and heading out to warm up the car. I chuckled to myself as I walked out the door. Judging by his tired eyes, I could tell he'd probably spent the whole night trying to recover those recordings without any success. After dropping him off at the office, I took my time before heading back to pick up the 2 goddesses. Instead, I hung out in the driver's lounge, casually playing games. This patience was a strategy, an insurance policy against my boss's suspicion. Sure enough, after a while, he called me. "What are you doing? Haven't you gone back to accompany them yet? Your sister-in-law is already calling, asking where you are." "Oh, boss, I'm just wrapping things up here. I'll head over right away. I told Xiao Chen to cover things here if you need anything," I replied with careful seriousness. "Forget it, don't worry about me," he said impatiently. "Right now, your main task is taking good care of your sister-in-law and Lu Ping." "Yes, boss. I'll take care of it." I could barely contain my satisfaction. Chapter 5, Hard to Find. Garden Hot Spring City is known as an urban paradise, combining food, drink, entertainment and fun. After touring the large commercial area and buying high-end piece-rate clothing, this was our second stop. When accompanying the 2 ladies on their tour, I was still very careful to behave myself and always walked behind the 2 goddesses. Unconsciously, Lu Ping slowed down her pace, leaving Chen Yuan behind and walking parallel to me. The worst thing was that she straddled my arm without any concealment. This sudden change made me realize what embarrassment is. A beautiful girl took the initiative to put her arm around me, so how could I not give her any face and just push her away? But to be honest, I really don't want to be like this. Although Lu Ping is very beautiful and charming, and the perfect woman that all men pursue, now I only have my sister-in-law in my heart. My sister-in-law lost Lu Ping while walking, and hurried back to look for her. When she saw this scene, her face changed drastically, but she quickly returned to normal. "Lu Ping, what are you doing?" Lu Ping chuckled, "What's wrong? I just like this handsome boy, is that okay?" It can be seen that the sister-in-law is extremely restrained in her emotions. "This is in public, don't cause trouble." Lu Ping listened to my advice, loosened her arms around me, smiled brightly and said, "You are the one who has so many problems." After playing in the hot spring city for an afternoon, the 2 super goddesses were exhausted. Yuan, let's not go back tonight. Let's go to the hot spring after dinner and then stay here." Lu Ping was so tired that she didn't want to move. My sister-in-law looked at me, and I understood her expression. Okay, the host is at the guest's discretion, do whatever you want. Well, that's very nice. You're worthy of being my best friend. Lu Ping happily made a heart gesture to her sister-in-law. My sister-in-law smiled and said, then you should call Lao Li and tell him, otherwise he will be anxious. No problem. Lu Ping said and dialed the phone. We had dinner at the Garden Hot Spring Hotel. I decided to stay at the hotel tonight, so I didn't need to touch the car. Lu Ping asked me for a bottle of foreign wine, but I couldn't get used to the taste. I didn't want to drink after drinking half a glass. It was not as good as erguatu. I laughed at myself, maybe this is my fate. After dinner, the two beauties went to the beauty salon for treatments. I had nothing to do, so I left the hotel and wanted to find a small shop to buy a small bottle of erguatu. I didn't enjoy the drink just now at all, and it aroused my alcohol addiction. You can buy wine everywhere here, but they are all high-end wines. It is quite difficult to buy a bottle of erguatu. I walked around the hotel twice but couldn't find any place selling erguatu. Suddenly, I saw a small alley in front of me. I thought there should be a small shop in it, so I turned in to try my luck. I hadn't walked far into the alley when I heard someone shouting behind me, "Catch the thief!" I turned around suddenly and saw a young man running towards me with his head down and a lady's bag in his hand. Stop! I stretched out my hand to stop him. The young man slammed on the brakes and looked at me with horror. Put your things down. I shouted firmly. The young man was big and strong. When he saw me blocking his way, he immediately turned around and ran to the other side of the alley. My reaction should be twice that of an average person. I had expected his action to happen, and most importantly, my startup speed is 10 times faster than his. I told you to put down the bag in your hand, did you hear me? The young man Yao Ming didn't expect that as soon as he walked into the alley, I would stand in front of him again. Probably frightened by my aura, the young man didn't dare to make any move this time. He strangely put the bag in his hand on the ground. I waved my hand, signaling him to go. At this time, a young and beautiful girl limped over from behind. When she saw the scene, she was stunned. I smiled slightly and said, "Is this bag yours?" I pointed to the bag on the ground and looked at the frightened girl. The girl nodded desperately but seemed too nervous to speak. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the young man turned around and ran desperately out of the alley. The girl took out 100 yuan from her bag and handed it to me tremblingly. "Thank you, brother." I smiled, made a welcome gesture to the girl, and then walked away in style. Just then, my phone rang. I opened it and saw a WeChat message from my sister-in-law. "Where are you?" I quickly replied, "I'm just strolling around playing with noodles. I'm so sorry for treating you so badly." My sister-in-law seemed a little apologetic. "It's okay, sister-in-law, I just missed you." I told the truth. "Well, I miss you too. So, you go take a hot spring bath first. We will have to wait for a while before we finish. We will come to find you later." My sister-in-law replied quickly. "Okay. I'll go right away." I walked towards the hotel hot spring. Soaking in the comfortable hot spring, thinking about my sister-in-law's charming expression, I was a little intoxicated. It would be a waste not to have some good wine in this situation, so I stood up and walked towards the bar to see if he had any liquor that I liked. As soon as I walked to the corridor leading to the hot spring room, I saw a gray-haired man walking towards me, supporting a young and beautiful girl, who was swaying with every step. Men all have a common problem, which is that when they see a beautiful girl, they will secretly look at her a few more times, and I am no exception. But when I looked at the girl's charming face, I was stunned. Isn't this the little girl whose newspaper was snatched away in the alley? Looking at the old man supporting her, I knew that they were not a normal couple. I felt sick to my stomach. It turned out that such a beautiful and innocent girl was actually doing this kind of work. I couldn't help but look at the girl's face again, and suddenly I felt that her eyes revealed a kind of despair and pleading. What happened? My special experience tells me that something is not right between the two of them. The girl seems to have drunk something in her drink. Forget it, this kind of thing is something that both of you are willing to do, so it's better to have less trouble than more. Don't cause trouble and ruin the good relationship between you and your sister-in-law. I quickly walked towards the bar. Almost all the liquors here are high-end, mainly foreign liquors. I had no choice but to drink 2 glasses of draft beer to quench my thirst and then started to walk back. Coincidentally, when I was passing the aisle, I saw the white-haired old man rushing out of the high-end private room in a panic. The white-haired old man trotted out quickly, looking back as if something terrible had happened. Chapter 6, Speaking from the Heart. Lu Ping sorted out her emotions that were disturbed by my lightning hand. My method is that when you two are having sex tonight, I will go directly to the deck to catch you in adultery. R. I was stunned. R what? Lu Ping said with a pout. I frowned and shook my head. This is absolutely not okay. If you catch me having an affair, my sister-in-law will never accept it. Well, I believe what you said. I know Chen Yuan better than you, but the next step is more important. Lu Ping showed a charming expression on her face. Oh my god, can you finish it in one go? Why are there so many steps? I really admire Lu Ping. He, Lu Ping laughed very beautifully. Just call me dear and I'll tell you. Okay, dear, tell me quickly. I was eager to know what happened next. You will have nothing to do from now on. When I catch you two, you should leave immediately if I tell you to. Lu Ping bit her lower lip. I will talk to her later. What to talk about? I asked with concern. Of course I'm doing Chen Yuan's job. Lu Ping glared at me fiercely. Now you'll have the advantage. Why? I didn't understand at all. After catching the adulterer, I simply confronted your sister-in-law and told her to let me join you. Only in this way can her husband feel at ease with her. Isn't this the opportunity one created for you? Lu Ping smiled proudly. Will it work? I was still a little worried. Lu Ping put away her smile and said, we'll see if it works when the time comes. Based on my understanding of Chen Yuan, it should be no problem. I thought about it and thought it was feasible, so I nodded and agreed. If you want to get 2 beautiful women, you have to take risks. Lu Ping then warned, remember this, you must not let your sister-in-law know that it was us two who plotted against her, otherwise we will be dead. I nodded solemnly, don't worry, I won't tell you unless you kill me. You're so talkative. Lu Ping stretched out her slender finger and poked me hard on the forehead. Lu Ping was the one who took care of the dinner. She was really a get-it-done person as she was busy running around. After dinner, the 3 of them returned to their rooms to rest, each with their own thoughts. Tonight, it was my sister-in-law who took the initiative to send me a WeChat message, go to the deck and wait now. I'll be there soon. I quickly pulled out a blanket and climbed onto the deck quietly. After all, the sea breeze at night was still very cold. I was afraid that my sister-in-law couldn't stand it, so I brought her a blanket. Soon my sister-in-law came up. Looking at her with a frightened face in the hazy night, she was truly the kind of woman among women, and every man would love her. Sister-in-law, why does she go to bed so early tonight? I asked knowingly. Well, maybe he was really tired. He fell asleep soon after lying down. My sister-in-law seemed very relieved. I naturally understood why Lu Ping fell asleep so quickly. The sea breeze is cool and the night is colorful. You should always cherish the wonderful time. In a short while, my sister-in-law and I fell in love. Just as my sister-in-law was singing to the sea for the first time, enjoying the deep and profound experience I brought her, Lu Ping's shouting rang out behind her, "R! What are you doing?" Oh my god, my sister-in-law was almost frightened by the scream and almost jumped into the sea. The 2 of us were stunned for a moment. I didn't expect you would do such a thing behind my back. Lu Ping climbed up. Lu Ping, don't misunderstand, listen to my explanation. The sister-in-law quickly wrapped herself in a blanket to ease the embarrassment of shyness. What else is there to explain? I saw everything. Didn't you forget about it just now? Lu Ping frowned and looked very unhappy. Sister Ping, I was about to speak when she interrupted me. Okay, this is none of your business, you can go down. Lu Ping played according to the plan. I quickly climbed down the deck, but instead of going to the bedroom, I quietly eavesdropped at the second staircase. After a moment's silence, my sister-in-law spoke first. Ping Ping, you won't tell Lao Li, will you? Lu Ping sighed, have you forgotten who I am? I am your best friend. My sister-in-law's voice trembled, I really have something to hide. I understand you. We are all women. Lu Ping persuaded her sister-in-law, and we are all women locked in cages. Alas, the sister-in-law sighed heavily, if Lao Li hadn't forced me, I wouldn't have. Okay, stop blaming yourself, Lu Ping said angrily, it's their own incompetence that makes us keep our chastity. Let's not talk about anything else, just my husband Wang, he basically leaves me aside and doesn't need me at all. Isn't this wasting my youth? My sister-in-law nodded and said, I can understand your difficulties. I heard every word clearly and I really admire Lu Ping's good intentions. Really, Yuan, if you can really understand me, why not let me join you? Lu Ping revealed her trump card. What do you mean? It seemed like the sister-in-law didn't understand Lu Ping's words at all. It's just the three of us together. Lu Ping said frankly. The sister-in-law cried out in surprise, no, absolutely not, I haven't fallen to that level yet. Lu Ping knew that his sister-in-law had misunderstood his meaning, and quickly added, TSK, it's not what you think. I mean to let Han Ming sleep with me tonight, okay? This my sister-in-law was speechless. What's this? Lu Ping continued, just once tonight. Lao Wang will come tomorrow, and Han Ming will still be yours then. Seeing that her sister-in-law still didn't say anything, Lu Ping said, besides, with my joining, Lao Li can really rest assured that the three of us are together. Don't you understand such a good thing? My sister-in-law nodded slightly, as if she understood the reason. So you agree? Lu Ping asked quickly. My sister-in-law sighed and said, oh, do you agree? She looked reluctant. TSK, you stingy guy. I'm not trying to steal your husband. Lu Ping said disdainfully. The sister-in-law looked at Lu Ping and said, to be honest, I would rather give Lao Li to you. I was really touched when I heard my sister-in-law say this. It turns out that I am more important to her than her husband. Come on, you should keep it for yourself, Lu Ping said with a look of disdain, I don't even know your husband's skills, calling him San Miao Taro is worthy of the name. How do you know? Have you had sex with Lao Li? The sister-in-law asked deliberately. Go to hell, you're so happy about him. Don't I know what my own husband is like? I guess Lao Li is the same as Lao Wang. Lu Ping spoke from her heart. Chapter 7 Hypocrite. We arrived at the luxurious single room of Yishihao Hotel. As soon as we entered the door, what caught our eyes was a large dining table that could accommodate more than 20 people for dining together. There were only 4 people including the boss in the single room. The glass plate in the middle of the dining table was filled with various high-end dishes. Any one dish would be enough to equal dozens of bowls of noodles I eat. Damn, rich people are really good at making things. Looking at the boss again, his eyes were already dull, but he was still holding the wine glass, saying to Lu Ping unconvincedly, come on, sister-in-law, let's have another one. I looked at Lu Ping and saw her winking at me. Then she raised the wine glass towards my boss and said, okay, I'll drink it first as a show of respect. After saying that, she tilted her head and made a drinking gesture. In fact, I saw that there was no wine in her glass at all. As expected, the boss fell into the trap and drank the drink in his cup in one gulp without hesitation. Then he slumped down in his chair and was about to slide down. I quickly stepped forward to support the boss, fearing that he would fall to the ground. The boss reached out and grabbed my collar. Han Ming, he pointed his other hand at my face, listen to me, kid, if you mess with your sister-in-law, I will kill you. I was a little confused and had no idea what happened at the banquet, but the boss spoke the truth after drinking and became more and more suspicious of me. What drunken talk are you talking about? The sister-in-law pulled the boss over and said, Han Ming, carry Lao Wang to the car first. Only then did I notice that there was a fat middle-aged man lying on the sofa over there. If it weren't for my physique, I wouldn't be able to carry Lao Wang on my back. The fat guy is so heavy. Why did you drink so much? I turned around and asked Lu Ping, who was following behind me, with my back to Lao Wang. Lu Ping made a face at me, then said with a smile, I got them drunk on purpose. Har har. Intentionally. I asked in confusion, isn't this asking for trouble? You idiot. Lu Ping slapped me from behind. Hurry up and send him to the car. Your boss is waiting. When I came back to pick up the boss, he was already lying on the ground unconscious and crying out loud. I was just about to ask my sister-in-law a question when she made a gesture to silence me. I immediately understood what she meant, knowing that she was afraid that the boss would pretend again. In no time, the boss was much lighter than Lao Wang, and I almost carried him to the car. My sister-in-law and Lu Ping didn't want to squeeze into the same car with the two of them, so they took a taxi and left first. When I drove back to my old moving place, my sister-in-law and her family had already arrived home. According to Lu Ping's idea, we originally wanted to arrange the boss and Lao Wang in the living room on the first floor, but my sister-in-law insisted on letting Lao Wang sleep in the guest bedroom on the second floor, so I carried the boss back to my bedroom. I have to say, this whole process was quite tiring. I sat on the sofa on the first floor to rest, wondering what the two beautiful rich women were doing in the house. Bang, something hit my shoulder. I looked up and saw Lu Ping waving at me at the door of the guest bedroom on the second floor. What does it mean when I stretch my neck and glare? She mouthed to me, "Come up quickly." I thought something had happened to Lao Wang, probably he had poured out the wine, so I quickly ran upstairs. Entering the guest bedroom, Lao Wang's snoring was so loud that it seemed like nothing was going on. "What's wrong, Sister Ping?" I asked puzzledly. "It's nothing." Sister Ping hugged my waist tightly from behind. Oh my god, I was really shocked. I quickly let go of Sister Ping's two jade hands, turned around and whispered to her, "Are you going to die?" He. Lu Ping covered her mouth and laughed softly. "Silly boy, if your sister didn't have any help, would I have asked you to come up?" I blinked in disbelief and asked, "What do you mean?" Then I pointed at old Wang, who was sleeping soundly on the bed. "You guessed right," Sister Ping said, and hugged me tightly again. I still felt uneasy, so I pushed her away again, staring at Lao Wang. "TSK, you still don't believe me?" In order to prove it to me, he jumped onto the bed, reached out and slapped his father in the face. Don't say that he was very energetic. After a crisp sound, Lao Wang just smacked his lips and started snoring again. "How is it?" Sister Ping smiled proudly. Now I felt at ease, and when I hugged Sister Ping again, I became bolder and coordinated my movements. I thought it was just a minor excitement, but I never expected that under the stimulation of this unprecedented program, Sister Ping and I couldn't control ourselves and performed a completely enjoyable show in front of her husband. It was really exciting. How is it? Is it exciting enough? Sister Ping's satisfied smile is really beautiful. I nodded heavily. "Sister Ping, you really don't play by the rules." "Humph," Sister Ping snorted, "he's not good enough himself, but he still controls me. Then I'm going to cheat on him in front of him." Ding, ding, ding. Before we had finished packing, my sister-in-law knocked on the door and came in. Seeing the look in front of me, he asked in disbelief, "What are you two doing?" Lu Ping was startled at first, but when she saw that it was her sister-in-law who came in, she laughed and said, "How about something exciting?" The sister-in-law blushed and turned around to leave, but was pulled back by Lu Ping. Your heart doesn't follow your mouth. Your husband Li Yongqiang treated you like that, so why do you mind?" My sister-in-law shook her head vigorously. "No, I'm scared." "What's there to be afraid of? They are already two dead pigs." Lu Ping glared fiercely at Lao Wang on the bed. No, I really can't." My sister-in-law's face turned a little pale, and she looked really scared. "Humph," Lu Ping snorted disdainfully, "if you don't believe me, just wait and see. After we leave, your old Li will ask Han Ming to get out." My sister-in-law was a little surprised. "No way." Lu Ping walked up to her and said, Yuan, don't always use your kindness to judge other people's hearts. Don't you think that Li Yongqiang has taken advantage of Han Ming, especially in this kind of thing? Can't he kick him out first?" Seeing Yuan's melancholy expression, Lu Ping sighed. "It's not that I'm being harsh, but this kind of thing could end up with someone dying." My sister-in-law nodded, but still asked with some doubt, "But how can he guarantee that Han Ming can plant it for me that time?" Lu Ping waved her hands. "You are wrong. Even if Li Yongqiang is not sure that he can get you pregnant in one go, you heard what he said about Han Ming tonight. That is his true thoughts. He is now on guard against Han Ming. Will he keep him by your side?" I also think that what Lu Ping said makes some sense. People like the boss are hypocrites with narrow minds. Chapter 8: People Under the Eaves. After all, the boss lady has a completely different personality from Lu Ping, and I don't want to do this kind of exciting but risky thing anymore. I returned to my bedroom and wanted to have a good rest. After all, I had exerted too much physical energy in the past 2 days. As soon as I lay down on the bed, the bedroom door was gently pushed open. My sister-in-law walked up to me and said carefully, "Xiao Ming, it's not that I don't want to do that with you, but I think it's better to be safe. Can you understand? Sister-in-law, I'm fine. As long as you are happy, I don't mind anything. I quickly made my attitude clear. Well, then sister-in-law is relieved. As she said this, sister-in-law threw herself into my arms and cuddled with me tenderly. Just when my passion was about to burst out, my sister-in-law pushed me away and said, "Remember, sister-in-law is always yours. We will have plenty of opportunities later. Let's carve something now." After saying that, she straightened her clothes and walked out. After signing the contract, Lao Wan hurried back with Lu Ping, and the three of us seemed to have returned to our former calm. On the third day after Lu Ping and her friends left, I began to admire her. She was really far-sighted. On my way to work that day, my boss ordered me to leave. Xiao Han, Vice President Li Shuang has been too busy with her business lately. I'm really worried about her driving around on her own. I don't have much to do anyway, so you can go over and drive for her these days. Li Shuang is the youngest sister in the boss's family. Due to the big age difference, she has the best relationship with the boss, but her relationship with his second brother is not that good. The boss's father has 3 children. The boss is the eldest, born to the old man and his ex-wife. The second son is named Li Yonghao. He is the son of the boss and his later wife. He and his brother are half-sisters. Li Shuang is the only girl in the family. She is very beautiful and has a good temperament, but her temperament does not match her name. She has a nickname in the company, known as a tomboy. The reason why my boss was so anxious to ask me to help my sister-in-law get pregnant and give birth to a child was because the old man was diagnosed with cancer and he probably didn't have much time left. The old man's only wish is to see my boss have a child, but unfortunately my boss herself is not good enough and can't have children. The boss's brother Li Yonghao is different. He already has 2 sons of his own, which makes the boss look at him differently. Seeing that the old man's health was getting worse day by day, the boss and his younger sister Li Shuang were both worried. On the one hand, Li Shuang had a good relationship with her eldest brother and wanted the old man to give her eldest brother more. On the other hand, all of Li Shuang's shares were invested in her eldest brother's company, so all the interests were related to her. Okay, boss. I'll listen to you. I didn't even say a word. The boss seemed very satisfied with my performance and said with a smile, "Very good, then I will give you a raise. Starting this month, I will give you 15,000 per month." No need, boss. It's enough for me to have enough money to spend. I was speaking from a heart. Although I have my own ambitions and want to make money to build a road in the village, as the saying goes, a gentleman loves money but he gets it in a proper way. The boss's expression was a little gloomy and uncertain. I'm giving you a raise not only for your hard work, but mainly because I think it's a bit inconvenient for you to live in my house, so I suggest you rent a house outside to live on your own. Oh. Although the boss' words were very blunt, I didn't find it strange. Boss, I listen to you. The boss patted my shoulder with satisfaction and said, "I knew you were my good brother and could understand my difficulties in every way. So what if I don't understand? If I had said this before I got together with my sister-in-law, I would have quit long ago. Boss, you've done me a favor, and people should repay the favor." I thought to myself, it was you who asked me to sow seeds for my sister-in-law, and now you're treating me like this, so I've done you a favor, don't you know? Well, I agree with what you said. The boss gave me a thumbs up. By the way, when you get to the company, you should report to Vice President Li Shuang first, and then I will tell her that I will give you half a day off. Go and look for a place to rent first to see if you can find one as soon as possible. Okay, boss. I could only agree. Quick. How quick? The boss changes his attitude faster than turning the pages of a book. After arriving at the company, I went to Vice President Li Shuang's office as instructed by my boss. I knocked on the office door and finally heard a female voice from inside, "Come in." I pushed open the door and entered Li Shuang's office. I said politely, "Vice President Li asked me to come and report to you. I will be your driver from now on. Please forgive me for any inconvenience." Li Shuang was bending over his desk, typing on the computer intently without raising his head. "Go take my car to the car beauty shop across the street for a wash." He casually tossed a pair of car keys on the desk. It seems that the rumor in the company that Vice President Li Shuang is a workaholic is true. I silently picked up the key, turned around and walked out. Wait a minute, Li Shuang's voice came from behind. Listen carefully, the car must be clean inside and out. I have a misophonia, and if it's not clean at all, I will hold you accountable. Shit, is this the so-called show of strength? I cursed inwardly. Okay, Vice President Li. I responded and turned to leave. I really didn't want to stay alone with her for any longer. When I arrived at the parking lot, I saw the conspicuous large Land Rover at first glance. She is really a tomboy. Almost all the senior executives in the company drive cars, but this female deputy manager drives a large Land Rover. While waiting for the washing car, I saw a small advertisement for a house for rent behind the station sign. It said that it was for shared rent, the price was very affordable, and it felt good. The most important thing was that it was in a community only 3 stops away from our company. I decided to go and look at the house first. Several masters at the car wash were very familiar with me. After I gave them their instructions, I got on the bus and headed straight for the community. According to the address, I found the rental house. Just as I was about to raise my hand to knock on the door, I heard a woman shouting inside, "Don't touch me, you hooligan." Shit, what's going on? I quickly compared the address and house number on the advertisement and carefully identified it. Yes, it's here. Shanshan, just obey me. I promise that you will have delicious food and drink spicy drinks in the future. The man's voice was heard from the room again. Isn't this just a naked break-in? This is the first thing that popped into my mind. Without time to think, I took 2 steps back and kicked the security door hard, but it was still strong enough that I couldn't kick it open. Then I kicked it again, and it collapsed with a loud bang. A man and a woman in the room, no. To be more precise, a boy and a girl were both stunned on the spot. Chapter 9 Injured. With a bang, the boy fell to the ground. I stepped on him without hesitation and said, "Why don't you do something else when you are young? Why do you have to do such a violent act of burglary?" The boy was probably frightened by my bravery. Big brother, please forgive me. I won't dare to do it again. Spare you. I looked up at the girl who was still frightened and my heart trembled at the sight. This girl was so pretty, with big eyes, a round face, and delicate skin. She was like a fairy who had descended to earth. At this time, perhaps because of being frightened, the 2 big eyes flickered and were particularly moving. Women can be roughly divided into 3 types. One is like my sister-in-law in front of outsiders, a cold and aloof iceberg beauty who makes people want to conquer her. The second type is a woman like Lu Ping, with flowing eyes and swaying posture. She is a natural romantic and men will be aroused when they see her. As for the third type, it is the little girl in front of you, who is pure and lovely and can arouse a man's desire to protect him. You attacked a weak woman, damn you. I kicked the boy hard again, but maybe I didn't control the strength well, and the boy screamed miserably. You're quite good at acting. Just as I was about to take the second kick, a weak and boneless little hand pulled me back. I turned around and saw it was that girl. Brother, don't, the girl pleaded. Girl, you must never show mercy to bad guys. If you give in an inch, they will take a foot further. I taught her seriously. Young people, you are too soft-hearted, which gives criminals an opportunity to take advantage of you. If everyone was like me, there would be no petty theft. The girl bit her lower lip lightly, seeming to want to say something but stopping herself. I was stunned. Could there be some hidden secret? Are these 2 a young couple flirting? Just when I was wondering, the girl said, "Brother, he is my classmate." So that's what it is. I scratched the back of my head and was hesitating whether to let go of my feet. If it was someone I knew, it might have been just a normal quarrel. Then you guys continue, I won't bother you anymore. I was about to leave, but unexpectedly the girl didn't let go of my arm. He Chen, since things have come to this, I'll make it clear. Don't bother me anymore. I don't like you. Turning around, I looked at the girl with a little surprise. I didn't expect that under her weak appearance, she had a side that dared to love and hate. The boy also got up from the ground and tidied his clothes in a panic. He first glared at me fiercely, then looked pleading. Shanshan, I'm serious. I like you very much. I will give you anything you want. Which boy is not infatuated? I sighed. The girl is indeed beautiful, and it is normal for the boy to be infatuated with her. It's a pity that the other party doesn't like you. What are you going to give me? Steal or rob? He Chen, don't think I don't know what good things you have done. I won't be with someone like you. The girl pushed him hard. Get out. Get out. The boy wanted to say something, but I sighed and said, brother, a forced melon is not sweet. Chasing girls also requires strategy, just like Zhuge Liang's 7 captures and 7 releases of Menghua. Even if a girl behaves very interestingly, you can't be impatient and try to win her over in one go. Over time, the girl will like you more and it is possible that she will pursue you. What's more, now that the other party is showing strong aversion, we should retreat first. This is not giving up, but retreating to advance. Isn't this the reasoning behind the great Chairman Mao's crossing of the Kaishui River 4 times and his discussion of mobile warfare? However, this brother didn't seem to understand my good intentions, and instead looked at me with anger. Damn it, what the hell is your business? There are really all kinds of people. He was begging for mercy at my feet just now, and as soon as he got up he started acting like a big shot. I am not a person with a good temper, so my face immediately darkened. Didn't you understand what she said? She told you to get out, but you shamelessly pestered me. You deserve to be single for the rest of your life. Say it again. The boy's eyes widened and veins on his neck bulged. I have a bad temper. When I was young and frivolous, I couldn't tolerate others saying a few words to me, and I often couldn't help but fight while talking. Only after entering society did I realize that doing this would bring disadvantages. Now, my edges and corners have been mostly smoothed out, but in front of young people, especially in front of beautiful women, I must not lose my momentum. I say you deserve to be single for the rest of your life, you ugly bastard. Nima. As expected, the boy got angry. He was more violent than I thought. He picked up a small vase on the table and smashed it on my head. This glass vase has sharp edges. If it is hit by it, I will have to stay in bed for at least a week. I don't want to get injured during a half-day vacation, because that would give my boss even more reason to fire me. What would my sister-in-law do then? As my thoughts raced, my body reacted quickly, and just as I was about to hide, I found the girl standing behind me. Damn it, if I had dodged it, the vase would definitely have hit her. In a moment of desperation, I grabbed a book on the table to block it. Bang! The vase fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. My fingers first lost feeling and then felt a burning pain. The pain made me so angry that I rushed to him in one step. Huh! The guy didn't seem to react. It was too late. I kicked him in the stomach and kicked him out of the door cleanly. If there hadn't been a turn blocking the way, he would probably have rolled directly to the first floor. Damn it, you two just wait for me, you adulterer, Shanshan, if you have the guts, don't go back to school. The boy held his stomach and kept yelling. I pretended to chase him, but he knew he was no match for me, so he got scared and ran away. Is this guy really your classmate? Why does he act like a gangster? I complained. It was only then that I noticed that there was a swelling on the ring finger of my left hand. I didn't know if the bone was injured. Fortunately, the book was thick enough and no other part of my body was injured. Are you injured? The girl saw that I was frowning, followed my gaze and exclaimed, wait a minute, I'll get you some medicine. After saying that, she walked into the room in her slippers without caring whether I agreed or not. I sat on the sofa waiting for her and looked around the house. It was a 2-bedroom, 1 living room suite. The furniture in the living room was very simple, with only a sofa and a glass coffee table. One of the 2 rooms was still empty. I thought the girl was also a tenant here and was looking for a roommate. After a while, she came out of the room with a bottle of red medicine in her hand. Don't move, I'll apply medicine for you. Still ignoring my opinion, she grabbed my wrist without further ado. The warm feeling made me tremble slightly. What's wrong? Does it hurt? The girl thought I was hurt. Just bear with it for a while. Chapter 10 Road Blockage. It would be a lie to say it didn't hurt. My ring finger was swollen like a sausage, and it got even scarier after I applied the mercurochrome. Fortunately, I have served in the army before, so this little pain is nothing. It's okay, I said. Unexpectedly, the girl burst out laughing. You seem to be quite impulsive, but I didn't expect you to be quite thoughtful. Thank you. What do you mean? I was stunned and didn't understand. She put down the mercurochrome and then used gauze to wrap my finger to make it easier for the skin to absorb the medicine. You kicked my door open without saying a word. You must be impulsive. You could have avoided the vase, but you just wanted to block it from me, right? I raised my head in surprise and stared at the girl's beautiful eyes. I didn't expect that she had seen through it. She must be the one who was really attentive. It's okay. It's my duty, I said politely. Thank you. The girl emphasized it again and then sat down next to me. We sat side by side like this, and for a moment, there was an indescribable atmosphere in the air, which seemed a little ambiguous and a little awkward. I looked at her quietly and estimated that she was only in her early 20s and was still studying. She had a rosy face and short chestnut hair that just reached her shoulders, as soft as cat hair. She looked very well behaved. What a lovely girl. The girl suddenly turned around and found that I was secretly looking at her, and her face turned even redder. Oh, well, I'm here to look for a house. To ease the embarrassment, I hurriedly took out a small card, pointed to the address and phone number on it, and said that I came here according to the card. So you want to rent a house? The girl suddenly realized. That's right, this is what I have to do today. However, I found that she seemed to live here. It is not convenient for men and women to live together. I guess she wants to find a female roommate. I was just about to say goodbye. After all, my boss only gave me half a day off. If this place doesn't work, I'll have to find a job somewhere else. Aren't you here to rent a house? The girl blinked her big eyes with a hint of doubt. I smiled and said, yes, I'm here to rent a house, but this. The girl smiled and said, you think it's inconvenient to share a house with a girl, right? Har har. I asked meaningfully, isn't it? What if I don't mind? The girl asked straightforwardly. This. Yes, the girl doesn't mind, so how can I, a grown man, refuse to do so? Time is really running out, and it may be too late to find another house. Since the boss has spoken, I must move out of the boss's house today. This is my bottom line. What are you still hesitating about? The girl said anxiously, it's all my fault for not writing it clearly on the rental ad. I forgot to write that it only recruits women. But it's also because of this that I escaped. This shows that we are destined to be together. Since it's fate, let's live together. You are a good person, I trust you. At this moment, her eyes were so clear and bright, without any impurities. I felt that this was probably what she was thinking. Then I have to compensate you for the security door, I said. She burst out laughing. Okay, this time I have to buy a sturdier one, so it won't break if I kick it. I gave her 1,500 yuan, 1,000 of which was this month's rent and 500 yuan was for the security door. Then I added her on WeChat so that we could communicate in time if I had any questions. What's your name? I clicked on her profile picture, which was a cat as cute as her, and prepared to change the note. Xu Shanshan. She sent me her name and phone number. After I fix the door, I'll send you a WeChat message to pick up the key. Thank you. I was the one who kicked the door and it was me who should have gone to fix it, but Li Shuang sent me a text message asking me to go back immediately. I hurriedly left He Shanshan's house and went to the car wash to pick up the car. When I got the car, I checked it carefully. After all, Li Shuang had instructed that the car should be cleaned inside and out. I have to say that this shop did a pretty good job. After washing, the cars go out through the back door and then walk through an alley with 2 lanes wide to the main road. I backed the car out and before I even got on the main road, I saw a few people standing in front of me. One of them looked quite familiar. Shit, is T that Xu Shanshan's classmate? There are 5 or 6 young men standing next to him, looking sloppy and blocking the road. My scalp was tingling and I honked the horn as hard as I could. Ding ding. The horn kept honking, but they showed no intention of leaving. He Qian even slowly stood up from the ground, holding something in his hand. Looking closely, it was a brick. Damn it. I cursed and slammed on the brakes, fearing that the kid would throw a brick at the Land Rover, and I wouldn't be able to compensate for it even if I sold it. After parking the car, I opened the door and jumped out, asking bluntly, what are you doing? Is this road yours? Fuck, you ruined my business, and you still ask me why. He Chen glanced at my car. Oh, the car is pretty good, no wonder that bitch Xu Shanshan would rather be with you. I serve you every day, but I am nothing. I rolled my eyes at him, suspecting he was out of his mind. I didn't know her before today, and this car isn't mine. Xu Shanshan's dislike for you probably isn't about money. Why is that? He Chen tilted his head. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror and you'll know, I said sarcastically. I'm not saying this, but this boy doesn't look that good, and his hair is dyed in a mess. I know he wanted to do the popular highlights, but it seems he didn't do it well. Plus, he has a pointed chin and monkey cheeks. It would be strange if Shushanshan would like a boy like this. When I was young, I also thought that Young and Dangerous were very handsome, and I tried every way to imitate Chen Hanan. But after serving in the army and looking back, I found that the neat and tidy crew cut was more suitable for most boys than the ruffian long hair. It is said that commenting on a person's appearance is the easiest way to anger people. He Chen was really anxious and jumped up and down. You think you are a good fighter and you are pretty cool, right? I don't have time to talk nonsense with you, get out of the way. He looked at his watch impatiently. If he delayed any longer, Li Shuang would probably scold him again. That woman's temper seemed even more unpredictable than his boss's. He must not make any mistakes. As if he could see my anxiety, He Chen said smugly, just beg me, give each of us 100 yuan as filial piety, kowtow, and I'll let it go. 100 per person. That's a nice thought. Even if my money came from the wind, I won't give a penny to this scoundrel. I didn't refuse immediately, but nodded, okay, wait for me for a moment, get in the car and get your wallet. Hurry up, we are in a hurry too. He Chen and his friends thought they had succeeded and laughed out loud. I got in the car, closed the door, fastened my seat belt, honked the horn, and smiled at them through the windshield. Damn, are you ready? The shrill horn sounded irritating them, and He Chen urged. Right away. As I said this, I flashed my headlights twice and then stepped on the accelerator. Oh, my eyes. Boom. The car of the tomboy vice president Li is different. This Land Rover Range Rover Sport, which costs more than 1 million yuan, can instantly burst out 381 horsepower. While their headlights dazzled their eyes, I accelerated and rushed over. Chapter 11 Car Smashing. Brother Qian, car? One of the gangsters reacted first and jumped to the side, followed by the rest. The man closest to He Chen was very loyal and helped He Chen, otherwise the guy would have been knocked to the ground. I served as a car soldier in the army for 2 years, so I must have a good sense of driving. I just wanted to scare these young people, but I guarantee that I won't hurt anyone. Fuck you. After the car drove past, He Chinsai realized that he had been tricked and shouted angrily from behind. I proudly turned on the speaker and whistled, saying that he was still a little naive to compete with me. There was a strange clanging sound, like a basin of cold water being poured over my head. I quickly looked at the rearview mirror and saw He Chen giving me the middle finger, then turned and ran away. Damn it! Out of professional sensitivity, I immediately stopped the car and jumped out to check the situation. The situation was worse than I thought. The guy was not good at fighting, but he was very accurate in throwing things. The red brick hit the taillight of the Land Rover right on target and smashed the lampshade. How do we do this? I felt dizzy. It was impossible to take the car back to be repaired. Li Shuang was in a hurry to use the car, so it would be even worse if I drove it back directly. Deducting money would be fine, but I was afraid that the boss would make a fuss about it. This incident happened on my first day as Li Shuang's driver. I was inexplicably angry. He Chen, stop right there. I would rather die with someone than not take him with me. I was about to chase him, but He Chen had already hailed a motorcycle, made a face at me from the back seat, and quickly left. Damn it, this guy ruined my good mood for the whole day. I don't know why, but I suddenly thought of Shushanshan's face and the phrase beautiful women bring disaster. I shouldn't have meddled in other people's business. It's too late to regret now. I can only bite the bullet and drive the car back. Before I reached the branch office, I saw a beautiful figure standing on the side of the road from afar, constantly looking down at her watch. Li Shuang was wearing a light gray professional suit, still looking capable. She was at least 1.7 meters tall and had a slender figure, which attracted many men's attention. If she didn't have a stern face all the time, she would definitely be a beauty. I deliberately drove the car just in front of her and braked so that she couldn't see the tail lights. Why does it take so long? Didn't I just ask you to wash the car? She started scolding me before I even got in the car. I replied vaguely, I had something to do on the way. Li Shuang didn't bother with me. After glaring at me, he opened the car door and prepared to get in. Is it necessary to be so fierce? Make people act like enemies. What's the big deal if you're a few minutes late? Rich people just demand more. Go to the Intercontinental Hotel and ask my brother what's wrong with you. Li Shuang said unhappily. Oh. It turned out that he was going to have dinner with the boss, but the first thing I thought of was my sister-in-law. If the boss goes, my sister-in-law should go too. I hadn't seen her for just one day, but my heart was already itching. I thought of my sister-in-law's snow white, tall body, smooth back, and her misty eyes when she was passionate. There was even a little reaction in my lower abdomen. However, one voice almost frightened me into impotence. Mr. Li, what happened to your car? Li Shuang and I turned our heads at the same time, and saw a greasy middle-aged man riding a bicycle passing by and stopping at the rear of the car. Lao Zhang, what's wrong with my car? Li Shuang had one foot already in the car, but got out again after hearing this. It's broken. This fat guy didn't come earlier or later. I thought Li Shuang hadn't noticed, so I would secretly take it to fix it while they were eating. It's quick to change the lampshade anyway. Now everything is over. I slumped in the driver's seat and didn't pay attention to what the two people behind me said. After a while, Li Shuang came back wearing high heels, her delicate facial features distorted by anger. Han Ming, explain it to me clearly. The broken scolding pierced my eardrums. I will probably remember this scene for the rest of my life. She pulled my ears and yelled in my ears. Mr. Li, please listen to my explanation. I endured the severe pain and pleaded humbly. Drive, and tell me clearly on the way. Even at this time, Li Shuang was unwilling to waste a minute. No wonder the company called her a workaholic. He urged me to drive and then simply sat in the passenger seat. Generally speaking, the boss always sits in the back, and it seems that Li Shuang is really angry. I started the car obediently and accelerated carefully. Mr. Li, when I was on my way back, I saw a group of kids playing on the side of the road and accidentally smashed my car. You said I couldn't get into trouble with a group of kids, could I? I made up an excuse. Where did you smash it? She asked. On Xingfu Road. My brain was racing. Fortunately, I was familiar with the area and there were no surveillance cameras on the entire Xingfu Road, so it was impossible for her to check whether I was lying. Li Shuang snorted, how can you be a driver? You can't be so picky about children. Why don't you ask their parents? If all else fails, leave your contact information and I'll go find them. Aren't you in a hurry? I muttered softly. You mean you're not to blame for this? Li Shuang turned his head and glared at him. Don't forget, you're a professional driver. Sometimes, I find women's logic very strange. You must never reason with them. A woman who is angry will definitely misinterpret what you mean and ignore objectivity. Even if what you say is right, it won't work. No, Mr. Li, it was my fault. I'm sorry. So I admitted my mistake without hesitation. It's good that you know. Li Shuang's anger obviously subsided a little, but I will still report it to my brother. Okay, Mr. Li. Although I was very reluctant, I also knew that there was no room for maneuver. Li Shuang was that kind of person. The more you argued with her, the less profitable it would be. We didn't talk for the rest of the way, but luckily the Intercontinental Hotel was not far away and we arrived there in just half an hour. After Li Shuang got off the car, I was about to go to the parking lot, but she said, come up with me and let the hotel staff park the car. I reluctantly gave the car keys to the waiter, reported for a private room, and followed Li Shuang. Originally, I planned not to go up there after parking the car, out of sight, out of mind, and no matter what she said to me, I didn't expect that she was more thoughtful than I thought. She insisted on having me there and making me uncomfortable. The private room was in the hotel's Chinese restaurant. It was a medium-sized one. When I followed Li Shuang in, the boss and his sister-in-law were already sitting there, eating peanuts and cold dishes. My sister-in-law was still radiant today. She wore a white strapless long dress, revealing her snow-white shoulders. I only took a glance at her and immediately looked away. When the boss saw me, he frowned. Why is Han Ming here too? Unless I was drunk, the boss never let me into the private room when eating. He just gave me some money and let me eat nearby. When I saw Li Shuang bringing me up, I thought she didn't know the rules. Chapter 12 Family Dinner. Brother, what kind of driver did you assign to me? He smashed my car on the first day of reporting. Li Shuang started scolding straight away. I thought to myself, please explain yourself clearly, why does it sound like I smashed the car? The boss and my sister-in-law both put down their chopsticks at the same time, especially my sister-in-law, who looked at me with a questioning look. Han Ming, what's going on? The boss said gloomily, I asked you to work hard and gave you a raise. It sounded nice, but he told me to go out and rent a house of my own and also assigned me a woman who was difficult to serve. It was clearly an attempt to make things difficult for me. I couldn't show any of this, so I told my boss the whole story with great trepidation. Of course, I told him the version where the thing was hit by a kid. The boss was also skeptical about this, but unlike Li Shuang, he did not delve into it further. Han Ming, if it was a new guy, I would definitely let him go. You've been driving for me for so many years, I must have some feelings for you. What do you think we should do? Har, you are playing the emotional card. If you really had feelings for me, you wouldn't have let me do that with my sister-in-law. And after you're done, you're destroying your bridge. If it weren't for my sister-in-law, I would probably slam the door and leave, or at most find another job. Aunt, a car light is quite expensive. At this time, my sister-in-law spoke. I looked at her, but she ignored me and looked at Li Shuang instead. That's right. I only bought my car a few months ago and I'm taking it for repair. Don't I feel bad about it? Li Shuang became even more unhappy after doing the math. My sister-in-law nodded and said, That's true, Han Ming. My old Li is soft-hearted. He can't say anything about letting you go, but you can't lose a penny of the compensation you owe. Oh. I replied, my heart bleeding. I roughly know how much a Land Rover's taillights cost, and I feel very sad when I think about losing a lot of my salary this month. Why doesn't my sister-in-law speak up for me? Well, it's settled. As for the salary increase, let's put it on hold. Young people should work hard and not get carried away just because they have achieved a little success. The boss waved his hand and said, You can leave now. I answered and left the box. It's so cruel. Not only did they deduct my salary, but even my salary increase was cancelled. I thought that after deducting the rent, I would earn 4,000 more a month than before, so it was worth it to be patient. Now, I have lost a taillight and still have to pay the rent myself every month. I earn less than before. For a moment, I had the urge to rush back to the box and resign. No, for the sake of my sister-in-law and sister Ping, these two beautiful women with different temperaments have already captured my heart. Strictly speaking, they have captured my body. You can't just abandon them because of a few thousand yuan. You won't find women of their level in any club with that much. Thinking of this, I feel much better. Normally when my boss eats, I just eat something casually, but today I decided to treat myself and relax. So I didn't leave the Intercontinental Hotel. Instead, I gritted my teeth and ordered a single meal for 198 in the restaurant on another floor. When the food came, I felt heartbroken, but at the same time I admired that you get what you pay for, and that 5-star hotels are really different. I had only taken a few bites when the phone screen lit up with a ding. Where are you? It was my sister-in-law's WeChat. My sister-in-law's WeChat chat background had long been changed to her. Afraid that the boss would accidentally see it, I changed the background for every person I knew, including the boss, and also changed his daily life photo. If the boss asks me, I will say that I have this habit. Even just seeing photos of my sister-in-law's daily life makes my heart pound. Still in the hotel. After typing, I took a photo of the single meal and sent it over. A few seconds later, my sister-in-law replied, It's not that I just got deducted money. I'm willing to give it up. I thought about it and said, It's all because of you that I didn't say anything nice to me. Now I've lost both my wife and my army. My sister-in-law didn't reply to me for a minute or two. I didn't know what she was busy with. Maybe she had started eating over there. I just buried my head in eating mine. I couldn't waste such delicious food. It was more than 10 minutes later that the message came in on the phone. I'll go down and find you. My heart trembled. We all knew what it meant for my sister-in-law to look for me, but the boss and Li Shuang were both there, and there were only 3 people in the box. If my sister-in-law left, wouldn't she be suspected? Stop it. I responded very quickly. The other side also got the news soon. Don't worry, Lao Li and his sister are talking about something, and I have nothing to do with it. I said I was going out to get some desserts, and they won't suspect anything. Their hotel not only provides meals, but also has a cafe that provides sweets and drinks. They are not on the same floor, and my sister-in-law has a good excuse. But I was still nervous inside. I actually believe in luck. I've been unlucky enough today, so I don't want to create any more trouble. When I thought of the tube top dress my sister-in-law was wearing today, I felt uneasy and even a little thirsty. I drank the ice cola in the set meal and made up my mind. I'm in the restaurant on the 6th floor. My sister-in-law sent a smiling emoji. It's the business office area on the 3rd floor. There are several lounges at the end. Please wait for me in lounge 4. I deleted the chat history and hurried to the 3rd floor without caring about the half-eaten meal. Chapter 13. Li Shuang is unhappy. Li Shuang's eyes were immediately filled with doubt. She raised her hand contemptuously and pushed me aside. She glanced at me relentlessly and strode into the house. Shuang, why is it you? My sister-in-law looked surprised. Sister-in-law, what are you two doing here? Li Shuang did not answer his sister-in-law, but asked back. At this time, I rushed into the room, stood between my sister-in-law and Li Shuang, and said solemnly, I called my sister-in-law over. You? It was obvious that Li Shuang was skeptical, and his eyes were full of disbelief and impossibility. Yes, it's me. My tone became even tougher. I knew I couldn't back down at this moment, or I would be dead. I have something to ask my sister-in-law. That kind of thing. Li Shuang glanced at his sister-in-law out of the corner of his eye. It's not something shameful, is it? Li Shuang is worthy of being called the leader among women, the tomboy among women. She dares to say anything and do anything. My sister-in-law's face turned slightly red after hearing what Li Shuang said. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. Vice President Li, I think you should be more respectful when you speak. If it was me, it wouldn't matter, but the person sitting there is your sister-in-law. Li Shuang looked unhappy. She asked her sister-in-law seriously, Sister-in-law, can you give me a reasonable explanation? I lost my temper, it's not what you think, we. Before he could finish his words, Li Shuang raised his hand and gestured to stop him. Did I ask you? His tone was frighteningly cold. Seeing Li Shuang's aggressive look, the sister-in-law stood up and asked, Is it necessary to explain to you? After saying this, my sister-in-law looked at me with a firm look in her eyes. Then she waved her hand at Li Shuang and walked out without looking back. You? Li Shuang didn't expect his sister-in-law to do this, and he was stunned for a moment. I admired my sister-in-law's courage even more. Looking at Li Shuang's embarrassed and angry expression, I felt a little happy. What are you still standing there for? Li Shuang threw all the rejection he got from his sister-in-law at me. Hurry up and pick up the car. Follow me. I turned and left, quickly coming to the parking lot. The big Land Rover was very conspicuous. After getting in the car, I calmed myself down and told myself to stay calm. If this matter was not handled well, it would not matter to me, but my sister-in-law's happiness would be completely overturned. After picking up the car from the warehouse and arriving at the hotel gate, I saw Li Shuang standing at the gate with a frosty face and slightly raised brows. To be honest, Li Shuang is truly a stunning beauty. Her cold eyes reveal a woman's elegance, and that arrogant demeanor just gives her a noble temperament. She opened the door and got into the car in one go. Li Shuang's efficiency is the only woman I admire. After the Land Rover started, I asked where to go. Li Shuang didn't say anything, but stared out the window with his bright eyes coldly. I didn't dare to ask any more questions. After all, what had just happened was going to happen, and asking one more question would probably cause unnecessary trouble. Stop the car. Li Shuang suddenly shouted in a commanding tone. I didn't stop the car, but instead stepped on the accelerator to speed up. Did you hear me? I told you to stop the car. Li Shuang was a little angry, and his voice was threatening. I still had no intention of stopping. Li Shuang really lost his temper this time. Han Ming, I'm telling you, you're fired. Stop the car and get out. I turned right and drove into a small road, then stopped steadily. Vice President Li, didn't you know that parking is not allowed on that road? Li Shuang hesitated for a moment, but still said in a domineering manner like a queen, so what if I don't let you stop? I have to stop if I say so. I curled my lips slightly and said, I'm a professional driver. I can't make such a low-level mistake. Seeing that he couldn't suppress me with his force, Li Shuang said, I'm the boss. Should I listen to you or me? His tone was filled with disdain. If you don't want to do this job anymore, just say so. High-end talents are hard to find, but there are plenty of people who can drive. How many of them can you grab? I was so angry that my eyes were bloodshot. I really didn't want to endure it anymore. However, when I thought of my sister-in-law, I regained my sanity. I couldn't just leave at this time. Before things were settled, I had to stay, at least to comfort my sister-in-law psychologically. Vice President Lee, you are right. You are the boss and I should listen to you. I reluctantly turned around and admitted my weakness. How about I drive the car back now? I said this on purpose. Humph. Li Shuang snorted heavily. I think you are just trying to make me angry. How dare I? You are the boss and I am a poor driver. I still rely on you to give me a meal. I looked helpless. Li Shuang is such a smart woman. Seeing that I was even sarcastic, she said bluntly, stop arguing with me. If you keep arguing with me, I will tell my brother about what happened today. Finally, we got to the point. I felt nervous, but from Li Shuang's tone, it seemed that there was still room for maneuver. It seemed that she had not yet decided whether to tell the boss or not. But I'm not stupid. If I give in at this moment, it would be tantamount to my own destruction. First of all, if I don't fight back, it means that there is really something going on between me and my sister-in-law. Secondly, if I admit it, then this will become a handle for her to control me in the future. I will have to listen to whatever she says, which is just like selling myself. Vice President Lee, what do you want to say to the boss? Are you making something up? I said nonchalantly. Li Shuang didn't expect me to be so stubborn. He wanted to give me a head start, but he didn't expect me to be so nonchalant. Don't you know what you're doing? She was obviously trying to piss me off. As long as I compromised a little, I would be considered to have accepted the matter. Vice President Lee, you are a senior executive of the company. I know your words carry a lot of weight, but as a senior executive, you can't just speak nonsense based on suspicion. Li Shuang chuckled and said, okay, since you are so stubborn, I will tell your boss everything I saw and see what he will say. Damn, the situation is a bit serious. If the boss really knows about this, even if there is no hard evidence, given his suspicious character, my sister-in-law will definitely have a hard time in the future. Why do you have to make trouble out of nothing? Was all I could ask her tentatively at this point. What? Are you scared? Feeling guilty? Li Shuang showed a smug smile on his face. Afraid? Guilty? I laughed noncommittally. I have nothing to be afraid of. I just don't want you to tell the boss something that's all groundless. Seeing that I was still stubborn, Li Shuang also gave a fake smile, har har. Do you think that because I've never been married, I don't know about those little things between men and women? Li Shuang's words touched my nerves, and I subconsciously glanced at the hand luggage. Chapter 14, Uncharacteristic. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Li Shuang thought she was intimidated by her, so she started to show her strong woman side and refused to give in. I can't understand. What's so good about you? Other than your good looks and manly appearance, everything else is simply not worth mentioning. How could my sister-in-law fall for you? As the saying goes, don't hit someone in the face, and don't criticize a short person. I can't stand it anymore. Vice President Lee, you have to have a bottom line. You can insult me, but don't insult my sister-in-law. Seeing the little triumphant smile on her face, I continued, if you insist on telling the boss about this, then you are a complete villain. I can't care about so many things anymore. I speak without considering the consequences. Villain, har har. Li Shuang was not angry, but laughed. Yes, I am a woman, I have never heard that only women are villains. Damn, this is possible. I really admire this female man. Forget about it. Don't struggle in vain. Wait for me to tell my brother about this, and then you can just pack up and leave. Really? I replied in a sarcastic tone, then reached out and opened the handbox. There was a dead silence in the car, and the air froze in an instant. You? Li Shuang's face flushed red. How dare you peek at my personal belongings? I smiled and said, oh, this is yours. I thought someone put it in your car. I didn't expect that such a strong woman and beautiful female vice president would also be worldly. I simply shut Li Shuang up and left her no chance to quibble. You? Li Shuang was speechless for a moment. I was thinking, if I told this to my colleagues at the company, would they post it on Weibo or something? I chuckled. Li Shuang's face changed rapidly in an instant, from black to red, and then red to black again. Humph, if a tiger doesn't show its might, you think I'm a sick cat. See how I deal with you today. I sneered in my heart. Han Ming, you dare to threaten me. Li Shuang gritted his teeth and said angrily. Har har, same to you. I glared at Li Shuang and said unhappily. I'm just giving him a taste of his own medicine. Okay. What do you want? Li Shuang looked at me, suppressing his anger. Let's make a deal. As long as you don't tell the boss about my relationship with my sister-in-law, I won't tell anyone about yours. Li Shuang was caught by me, and he was like a cat whose tail was stepped on, and he became scared in an instant. Okay, I promise you, if this matter leaks out at all, I will not forgive you. Hearing Li Shuang say this, I couldn't help but feel relieved. I was able to suppress this matter without any danger. I must be extra careful when meeting my sister-in-law in the future. I warned myself secretly in my heart. Li Shuang was out of my sight and was in a very depressed mood. Her beautiful face was cold as ice. Vice President Li, where are we going now? I asked cautiously when I saw Li Shuang remain silent. Li Shuang glared at me unhappily and said, let's go to the 0-degree bar. Go to the bar. After hearing Li Shuang's instructions, I was extremely shocked. I didn't expect that a girl like Li Shuang, who comes from a wealthy family, would also go to a bar. I couldn't help but imagine some unbearable scenes in my mind. Li Shuang was very angry because I had tricked him. When he saw that I hadn't started the car, he yelled at me. Han Ming, are you deaf? I told you to go to the 0-degree bar. Li Shuang yelled at me angrily. Damn. You are so fierce, just like a female demon. Who will dare to marry you in the future? I secretly cursed Li Shuang in my heart. But looking at her incredibly beautiful face, I still can't hate her in my heart. I drove Li Shuang's big Land Rover all the way. The street lights outside the car window were moving backwards in rows. Before we knew it, we had arrived at the door of 0-degree bar. Li Shuang seemed to not want to stay with me for even a minute. As soon as the car stopped, she opened the door and drove away. I quickly turned off the engine, got out of the car and chased after him. This bar is full of good and bad people, and Li Shuang is so beautiful and has such a sexy body. If she meets a bad guy and something goes wrong, Li Yongqiang will kill me. Thinking of this, I had no choice but to bite the bullet and follow Li Shuang closely. As a soldier who just returned from the military, this was my first time in a bar. As soon as I entered the bar, I was stunned by the colorful and dazzling scene before my eyes. The noisy electronic music, accompanied by the cheers of men and women on the dance floor, filled the entire bar. You couldn't hear any conversations with others in there. Everyone was like crazy, rushing to the dance floor, twisting their bodies desperately to release the stress of the day. My eyes kept following Li Shuang's figure, for fear of losing her. The dance floor was packed with men and women. As I walked through the dance floor, a few hotly dressed girls waved at me. They wore cool suspender skirts, revealing their breasts, which was very exciting. Faced with these tempting bodies, although I was a little tempted, I still did not forget my mission. I ran across the dance floor as quickly as possible to look for Li Shuang. When I ran out of the dance floor, I couldn't see Li Shuang anymore. I felt anxious. Oh no, I actually lost her. If my boss knew about this, he would kill me. At this time, I was extremely anxious and searched for Li Shuang in every corner of the bar. Just when I was getting anxious, a beautiful figure suddenly flashed before my eyes. She was wearing a silk V-neck dress and a pair of transparent stockings, which vaguely covered a pair of long and slender legs. She has big wavy hair, big, deep eyes that seem to emit electricity, and a pair of bright red lips that are full of provocation. Li Shuang. I looked closely and was stunned. In the blink of an eye, Li Shuang seemed like a different person. She is a dignified and serious deputy general manager of the company during the day, but becomes a sexy hottie who tempts people to commit crimes at night. Looking at the little bit of spring scenery exposed under the V-neck, I almost got blood boiling. Vice President Li. I walked up to Li Shuang with a look of astonishment. My heart beat faster as I got closer to her. Plop, plop. It seemed as if it would jump out of my chest in the next second. Li Shuang looked at my abnormal behavior and sneered. Looking at her beautiful face, I was stunned for a moment. It would have been better if she didn't smile, but this smile is simply enough to confuse everyone and confuse the world. As expected, countless men immediately surrounded them like headless flies. "Miss, can I buy you a drink?" A middle-aged man in a suit with a greasy face walked over, holding a wine glass with a lot of gold rings on his hands. One can tell at first glance that he is a nouveau riche with low quality, who actually shows off his wealth in such a vulgar way. I turned my nose up at this ring man. But what broke my heart was that Li Shuang actually took the wine from his hand with a smile. Chapter 15 Rescue. After a night of erotic dreams, I was woken up by the alarm clock in a daze. The next day, I sent Sun Ying to school. I don't know if it was because I was by her side, or because her ex-boyfriend became scared after being beaten up by me, but he didn't come out to make trouble. However, Sun Ying was still a little worried, so she made an agreement with me to come and pick her up after school. After parting with Sun Ying, I quickly rushed back to the company. There is also an old lady waiting for me to serve her. Vice President Li. After arriving at the company, I immediately reported to Li Shuang. Li Shuang was wearing a smart professional dress with her long hair piled high, revealing her angular facial features. She looked very energetic. She is indeed a great beauty who can handle any style. Thinking of this, my eyes involuntarily fell on Li Shuang's neck. Under the professional suit is a black chiffon shirt, which vaguely reveals Li Shuang's proud chest lines. I couldn't help but think of Li Shuang, who was twisting her waist in the nightclub last night. Thinking of her beautiful red lips, my heart beats again. "Han Ming, are you deaf?" Li Shuang's eyes widened and she yelled at me. Only then did I come to my senses. Li Shuang had just instructed me on today's work tasks, but I didn't hear anything because I was distracted. Vice President Li, what did you say?" Li Shuang rolled his eyes at me, and that look of disgust seemed to be calling me an idiot. "I have a dinner this afternoon to discuss cooperation with Tongrun Company. Please pick me up on time." After Li Shuang gave the instructions, he let me out. Another dinner party. Thinking about the past few days, Li Shuang has been running around at various dinner parties. I can't help but feel that being a boss is not that easy. Since the dinner is in the afternoon, there are still several hours left. Thinking of this, I suddenly remembered the proprietress. I haven't contacted her since we had a love night last night, and now I start missing her again. I was about to take out my cell phone to send a text message to the boss's wife and ask her what she was doing. At this moment my cell phone suddenly rang. When I saw the word "boss" on the screen, my heart skipped a beat. Boss? Why would my boss call me at this time? I felt anxious. Did he find out that I had an affair with the boss's wife last night? I answered the phone with trembling hands. "Boss." "Han Ming, where are you?" the boss asked anxiously on the other end of the phone. Hearing the boss's anxious tone, my heart suddenly rose to my throat. I'm at the company." I stammered immediately. "Hurry back to the villa. There are people making trouble outside the villa. Your sister-in-law is alone at home. Go and protect her now." The boss ordered me anxiously. When I received the boss's order, I immediately agreed. After hanging up the phone, I hurried out of the company and drove Li Shuang's Land Rover towards the villa. After arriving at the villa, there were indeed a few burly men standing outside, and they seemed to want to break in through the door. I felt anxious and opened the car door and rushed out. "What are you doing?" I looked cold and yelled at those burly men. Those burly guys were dressed in a very ruffian style and had various tattoos on their bodies. They looked like gangsters. I don't know what the boss did to provoke this group of people. "You little brat, why are you meddling in other people's business? Get out of here if you know what's best for you." A man with a tiger tattooed on his left arm stood up and yelled at me coldly. "Humph! Get lost. There is no such word in Grandpa's dictionary." I sneered, clenched my fists, veins bulged on my forehead, and was ready to fight at any time. When the big men saw me walking towards them with clenched fists and a gloomy face, they also vigilantly assumed a fighting stance. Although they were numerous and each one was strong and brave, I did not feel the slightest fear. "You're looking for death." The tiger man in front swung his fist and hit me. My eyes darkened and I reached out to catch his fist. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes. I raised the corner of my mouth and sneered, and the next second, I grabbed his wrist and pulled his hand to the ground. In just a few seconds, I knocked him to the ground. The other people were also stunned when they saw him being knocked to the ground by me. A wicked smile appeared on the corner of my mouth. "If you are not afraid of death, come to me," I said in a low and dark voice. The men were stunned for a moment, and looked at me with frightened eyes. "What kind of gang are you in, you little brat?" "Special Forces 322nd Regiment, code name, Gintama," I said coldly, word by word. When those big men heard what I said, they couldn't help but shudder. However, they were gangsters after all, and were not intimidated by my words. They hesitated for a moment and then rushed towards me again. As I watched them swarming towards me, I didn't show any sign of fear. I raised my fists to block their attacks, but they relied on their numbers and attacked my weak spots fiercely. Fortunately, I had trained in the army, so I was extremely agile and I dodged their fierce attacks one by one. Seeing that they still refused to give up, I became a little annoyed. Seeing them launching a new round of attack on me, I seized the opportunity. Just when they were about to get close, I leaped up, kicked one of them hard. After a few kicks, they were all hit in the heart by my legs and fell to the ground screaming. Looking at them falling to the ground with painful looks on their faces, a sneer appeared at the corner of my mouth. "Get out of here right now, or I'll break your arms and legs." At my warning, those burly men all got up from the ground. In just a few seconds, they disappeared. Seeing that they all ran away, I walked to the door with peace of mind and knocked. "Sister-in-law, it's me, Han Ming, please open the door," I shouted while knocking on the door. After a while, the proprietress opened the door. When the proprietress saw me, she was so excited that she threw herself into my arms. "Han Ming, I'm scared to death," said the proprietress trembling. Looking at the delicate appearance of the proprietress, I suddenly felt a sense of sympathy for her. "It's okay, I'm here, sister-in-law." I gently stroked the proprietress's back to comfort her. "Woo-woo. The boss is such a coward. His wife is in trouble, but he doesn't even dare to come over," the proprietress said angrily while sobbing. Seeing that the boss's wife was heartbroken because she didn't come when something happened to the boss, I also looked down on him a little. I secretly made up my mind that I must find a way to take the boss's wife away. Chapter 16 Greasy Old Man. "Is that so? Then let your sister-in-law go with you." "Sister-in-law, I haven't been to such a dinner for a long time. I'd like to go with you to see it." The proprietress smiled sweetly at Li Shuang, looking harmless. However, I noticed that when Li Shuang heard what the proprietress said, the smile in his eyes obviously disappeared. "Har har." Li Shuang laughed awkwardly twice. "Sister-in-law, this is business." Li Shuang seemed to intentionally emphasize that she was not just going there for a meal, but that this dinner was related to the interests of the company. "Can't I take care of the company's business?" the boss lady replied to Li Shuang coldly. For a moment, Li Shuang was speechless by the proprietress's words. "Har har, since my sister-in-law wants to go with us, that's not impossible." Li Shuang pondered for a moment, then said with a smile again. Then Li Shuang got in the car. When I got in the car, I saw Li Shuang looking at me with a complicated look. I couldn't clearly explain what kind of emotion was contained in Li Shuang's eyes. "Go to their hotel." After getting in the car, Li Shuang gave the order coldly and said no more. The atmosphere in the car suddenly became very awkward. I could only drive on without saying a word. The proprietress sitting next to me always had a peaceful smile on her face, and Li Shuang also looked casual. Watching these two women competing secretly, I couldn't help but feel a chill in my heart. The war between women really has different reactions. I sighed in my heart. After a while, the car arrived at the hotel's underground parking lot. After I parked the car, I took the helicopter to the hotel with the proprietress and Li Shuang. As soon as I entered the lobby, I was attracted by the scene before me. "This decoration is too luxurious," I exclaimed sincerely. The marble floor tiles are smooth and white, and the 3-meter-high crystal chandelier is full of jewels and dazzling. The reception desk has a unique style and the countertop is made of marble, which looks very noble and elegant. As soon as the three of us entered the door, a lady in a uniform skirt came to greet us. The girl in the uniform skirt has an elegant figure, flawless fair skin, red lips and white teeth, which is very pleasing to the eye. The lady in the uniform skirt seemed to recognize Li Shuang and Chen Yuan. He immediately smiled and bowed to them. "Mrs. Li, Vice President Li. Where is the box I booked yesterday?" Li Shuang also nodded slightly to him and then asked. "Please follow me," said the girl in the uniform skirt, and then she led the three of us into the elevator. The hotel's internal elevator goes directly to the 33rd floor. Looking at the floor number, I was shocked. It was really poverty that limited my imagination. It's really amazing that a building can have more than 80 floors. I secretly sighed in my heart. Led by the girl in the uniform skirt, we arrived at the box that Li Shuang had booked yesterday. When I arrived at the 33rd floor and the elevator door opened, I was shocked by the scene in front of me. This is not a hotel restaurant, it's simply a palace in the imperial city. A large Persian carpet with intricate patterns, embroidered with a variety of designs, looks like the production process is very complicated. Two huge aqua blue glass bowls hang from the ceiling, sparkling and making the entire restaurant look dazzling. The layout of the entire restaurant adopts the most popular elements, and the tables and chairs are made of expensive golden fir wood. Now I finally understand what a real rich person is. But there was no trace of surprise on the faces of the proprietress and Li Shuang, which made me seem ignorant. When I realized this, I immediately put away the surprised expression on my face and tried to look calm. But my heart was already stirring. Damn, if I could dine in such a high-end restaurant every day, I would wake up laughing in my dreams. I muttered to myself. Li Shuang and the proprietress were already walking in front, so I quickly followed them. Xiao Shuang, who are our guests this time? The proprietress asked puzzledly. Inspector General of Customs, all our imported and exported goods have to go through customs, so I came here specifically to talk to them. Li Shuang responded. The boss's wife hadn't been involved in company affairs for a long time, and she felt a little unfamiliar when she heard Li Shuang say this. Is that so? I don't know if this inspector can be trusted. If he is someone who gets something for nothing, Xie Shuang, you better be careful. The proprietress was giving Li Shuang some advice. When Li Shuang heard her say this, he just smiled slightly. Sister-in-law, don't worry. I have already checked out all their backgrounds. Nothing will happen to them. Li Shuang responded with a smile. Then she changed the subject and continued to look at the boss lady. Sister-in-law, you shouldn't work too hard. I heard my brother say a while ago that you are preparing for pregnancy. Li Shuang's move was really too much. He really just brought up things that were not relevant. She knew that the boss's wife had been married to the boss for 7 years and neither of them was pregnant. It was obvious that Li Shuang was teasing the lady boss when he said this. The proprietress was not a fool, and naturally understood what Li Shuang meant. She just sneered. After all, falling out in this situation would have a bad impact on the reputation of the Li family company. Seeing that the boss lady looked unhappy, I felt a little worried. Li Shuang was too cruel. After all, she was his sister-in-law. How could he slander her like this? I cursed Li Shuang fiercely in my heart. Although she is very beautiful and has a hot body, I really can't say anything good about her personality. Before we knew it, we had reached the door of the box. Before we could push open the door of the box, the customer inside had already opened the door. They seemed eager to meet Li Shuang. The box is filled with a bunch of greasy uncles, no wonder they are so impatient. After all, it is an honor to have dinner with a beauty like Li Shuang. Oh, Vice President Li, you finally showed up after so much anticipation. A middle-aged bald man stood in front of Li Shuang and greeted us. Although he was wearing a suit and tie and looked gentle and refined, I felt sick when I saw the lewd smile on his face. No, the traffic is really too congested. Sorry to have kept you waiting for so long, Boss Lin. As Li Shuang spoke, he stretched out his hand to shake hands with Boss Lin. The middle-aged man held Li Shuang's hand tightly and refused to let go. On the surface he pretended to be polite, but in fact his hand was always touching Li Shuang's soft little hand. Looking at the middle-aged man's obscene behavior, I almost couldn't help but want to go up and beat him up. But I was stopped by the boss lady next to me. Don't offend the government even if you can offend anyone. The proprietress pulled me and whispered in my ear. Chapter 17 Drinking Party. Come on, pour their wine. The narrow-eyed middle-aged man took a bottle of wine with a charming smile and diligently filled the glasses for Li Shuang and the proprietress. As I watched him pick up the wine, I already guessed their routine. They thought Li Shuang and the proprietress were sexy and beautiful, so they wanted to take the opportunity to get them drunk and take advantage of them. Vice President Li, Mrs. Li, come, let me toast you a glass, said the narrow-eyed middle-aged man with a lewd smile on his face. Har har, Mr. Liu, I have a stomachache recently and can't drink. Of course Li Shuang understood their thoughts, so he deliberately used stomach problems as an excuse to shirk his responsibilities. The proprietress also smiled apologetically. "I'm so sorry, bosses. My two sisters are both sick. How about we drink tea instead of wine?" When the middle-aged men heard Li Shuang and the proprietress's excuses, their faces instantly turned gloomy. "Vice President Li, Madam Li, you are not giving us face," said the bald middle-aged man. "Yeah, you see, we go out to a restaurant just to drink and have fun, right?" other bosses also echoed. Seeing them deliberately making things difficult for Li Shuang and the proprietress, I couldn't sit still anymore. "Since Vice President Li and Mrs. Li can't drink, let me lead them to drink." I stood up and said loudly. Those middle-aged men looked at me with suspicion. "You? Who are you?" said an old man in a green shirt. Looking at his contentious eyes, I just felt disgusted in my heart. What right does he have to despise me? He is so old and skinny, yet he is still so lustful. I cursed inwardly. "Oh, this is our company's department manager, Xiao Han." Seeing that the bosses all had droopy faces, Li Shuang hurriedly explained with a smile. Li Shuang is very smart. She knows that if she says that she is just a driver, those bosses will definitely not buy it. What driver would dare to contradict the boss of Party B in public? "Xiao Han, how can you talk to the bosses like that? Drink 3 cups as punishment." Li Shuang suddenly frowned and said to me. When I heard Li Shuang's words, I couldn't help but be stunned. I was clearly helping her, but she treated me like this, which surprised me. Is Li Shuang seeking revenge for his personal grudge? I thought to myself. Vice President Li, don't be so serious. He looks so young, so he must have just taken office. Just be more careful next time, said the bold old man who came outside to greet us. That's outrageous. Li Shuang rolled his eyes at me and snorted coldly. The proprietress also pulled me and motioned for me to sit down quickly. Boss Lin, let's not rush to drink, why don't we talk about our cooperation first? Li Shuang's face was still full of smiles, but that smile was too superficial and one could not see the true emotions in her eyes. When the old man in the green shirt heard Li Shuang say this, he shook his head impatiently. Hey, Vice President Li, we haven't finished discussing business in the company yet. Now that we're in this kind of leisure place, we should have fun to our heart's content. Hearing them say this, I couldn't help but feel ashamed. I didn't expect that everyone present here was a veteran fox. Boss Liu, what you said is wrong. Since we are all businessmen, what else can we talk about if not business? Okay. If you want to drink, I'll drink with you. Seeing that they seemed to be forcing her to drink, Li Shuang had no choice but to compromise. Seeing a hint of embarrassment in Li Shuang's eyes, I realized for the first time how difficult it is to be a boss, and I also felt some admiration for Li Shuang. No matter how bad her character is in life, at least she is a qualified boss. Li Shuang picked up the wine glass in front of him with a fake smile on his face. Oh, I'm risking my life to accompany you today. Come on, let's drink. I sat aside and watched Li Shuang strategizing and chatting happily at the drinking party, and my previous disgust towards Li Shuang slowly faded away. Seeing how he tried hard to keep smiling even though he was reluctant in his heart, I was actually moved. Seeing those middle-aged men pouring cup after cup from her, I suddenly felt a surge of pity in my heart. She is so mean to me on a daily basis, making things difficult for me and even getting angry at me. I should feel happy when I see her being forced to drink, but I am not happy at all now. Instead, I feel sad for her. What's wrong? Seeing me looking at Li Shuang with a frown, the proprietress secretly pulled my sleeve. I shook my head and said, Sister-in-law, if Vice President Li continues to be forced to drink like this, his body will be damaged. Well, that's how business is done. The proprietress looked at Li Shuang, who was drinking one cup after another, and couldn't help but sigh. What's wrong? Are you feeling sorry for Szechuan? The proprietress looked at me suspiciously. No, I just can't stand those old men. They are so old but still disrespectful. They even don't let a little girl go. Looking at the lewd smiles on the faces of those greasy old men, I wanted to stand up immediately and beat them up. If it weren't for their business, who would be willing to sit here and drink and eat with them? Oh, it's hard for Szechuan. He made such a big sacrifice for the company's business. There seemed to be some reluctance in the proprietress' eyes. What should we do now to help Vice President Li out of this predicament? I whispered in the boss's wife's ear. Just say that the company made an emergency call and asked Xiaoshuang to rush back for a meeting immediately, and then you take over here. The boss's wife gave me a suggestion. Then I immediately followed the boss lady's instructions, reached into my pocket, secretly took out my cell phone, pressed the music button, stood up and pretended to answer the call and walked out of the house. Vice President Li, there's an urgent call from the company asking you to hurry back for a meeting. I ran in with an expression of extreme urgency. What? Li Shuang stood up in an instant. Did something happen in the company? When the old men next to him heard Li Shuang say this, they also showed some surprise on their faces. Oh, I'm so sorry, I have to go back immediately. I'll let my department manager entertain you. Xiao Han, you have to make sure you guys are happy. After dinner, let's go sing some songs, please make the arrangements. When the bosses heard what Li Shuang said, they looked a little unhappy, but they didn't know what to say. Li Shuang also cooperated with my performance very cleverly. Then she hurriedly said goodbye to those wretched old men and left the party. Looking at Li Shuang's back as she left in a graceful manner, I found that when she turned around, she actually gave me a grateful smile. I was stunned for a few seconds, and a warm feeling rose in my heart. Actually, the hot female boss isn't that annoying, I thought to myself. Chapter 18 Group Fight. After Li Shuang left, the old men suddenly felt bored. After they had a quick meal, I planned to take them to KTV to sing, but they were not in the mood. After leaving the hotel, the proprietress and I walked on the street. The big Land Rover had been driven away by Li Shuang, so I strolled on the street with the boss's wife. Xiao Ming, I noticed that you and Xiao Shuang are getting closer and closer. As we were walking, the proprietress suddenly spoke in a deep voice. I turned my head and looked at the proprietress. There was a hint of jealousy in her beautiful eyes. Sister-in-law, you think too much. You are the only one in my heart, I said to the proprietress with affection. But I'm not as young as Xiao Shuang, nor as pretty as her, the proprietress said with a worried look on her face. I interrupted her before she finished speaking. Sister-in-law, I really like you. It's not just superficial that I like your face. I like being with you. If I leave you, I will be unhappy, I said sincerely. When the proprietress heard me say this, a layer of tears of emotion rose in her eyes. Xiao Ming, I wish I could have met you earlier. Ding ling ling. Just as we were talking, the boss's cell phone suddenly rang. The boss lady took out her cell phone, and the screen showed that the caller was the boss. Boss? Why did the boss call his wife at this time? The boss lady answered the phone immediately. Hello, husband, what's wrong? Wife, why don't you stay at home? It's so dangerous to be outside alone. Where are you? I'll pick you up, the boss said anxiously on the other end of the phone. Oh, you don't have to pick me up. I'll be right back. The proprietress seemed to want to stay with me for a while longer. When I thought of this, I felt touched. My love for the boss lady deepened a little bit. After hanging up the phone, the boss lady looked at me with resentment. He seems to be crazy now. As long as I go out for a long time, he will keep calling me, as if I will grow wings and fly away. How could this happen? Isn't this like treating the boss's wife like a criminal? Oh, do you think he is tired of me? The proprietress sighed softly. Sister-in-law, even if the boss passes away, you still have me. I will treat you well all my life. Looking at the sad expression on the boss's wife's face, I said with heartache. Xiao Ming, I can't stand Li Yongqiang anymore. A hint of ruthlessness appeared in the proprietress's eyes. Sister-in-law, wait a little longer. When I have enough strength to fight the boss, I will grab you and protect you well. I took the proprietress's hand affectionately and said sincerely. Xiao Ming. The proprietress was moved when she heard my affectionate conversation. Okay, just because of what you said, I will definitely wait for you. After saying this, the proprietress stood on tiptoe and kissed me lightly on the lips. Although it was just a light kiss, it left me with an endless aftertaste. Although I really want to keep the boss's wife by my side, I know that now is not the right time. After watching the proprietress leave, I planned to go back to the rental house. Thinking of this, I suddenly remembered that Sun Ying should be done with school, and I had promised to pick her up. Thinking of this, I immediately took a taxi and rushed to where Sun Ying went to school. When I arrived at the school gate, Sun Ying had just finished school and was walking out of the school. When Sun Ying saw me, a gentle smile immediately appeared on her face. She is a college student. She is dressed very elegantly and has long flowing hair, making her look like a fairy from heaven. Moreover, she was wearing a long tulle dress today. Her slim figure was faintly visible, which made me feel confused. Han Ming, you're here so early. Sun Ying had a happy smile on her face. She seemed a little surprised that I could arrive at the school on time to pick her up. Hey, Sun Ying, who is this? Your boyfriend. Just as we were talking, a few young men dressed very fashionably suddenly appeared around us. I took a look at their young faces and guessed that they were probably students too. But the way they looked at me didn't seem friendly. Could it be that these hooligans are coveting Sun Ying's beauty? Han Ming, let's go. The smile on Sun Ying's face disappeared instantly, and she pulled me and prepared to leave. Stop. You think you are pretty and act like a big shot. Didn't you hear me talking to you? Among those male students, Li, a male student wearing a leather jacket, stood in front of us. Looking at his arrogant look, I already guessed that he was going to cause trouble. Hey, kid, watch your mouth and respect women, okay? I pointed my finger at the young man in the wallet and leather jacket with a serious face. Hee. Those male students suddenly sneered. The next second, the smiles on their faces disappeared instantly, and a fierce look appeared on each of their faces. Fuck you, the boy in the leather jacket yelled and swung his fist at me. Swish. Just as the fist was about to hit my face, I raised my hand in time and grabbed his wrist. There was a look of shock on his face. Even though I had quick reaction time and was able to grab his hand. But what shocked him was that the palm that grabbed his wrist contained such a powerful force. Seeing her eyes widen with fear, I raised an evil smile on the corner of my mouth. What a coincidence, fighting is my specialty, I said with disdain. He was stunned for a moment, trying to break free from my restraints. But I grabbed his wrist hard and kicked him forward. He was dragged by the powerful force in my palm, his center of gravity was unstable, and he fell forward. Seeing that he was about to fall to the ground, I immediately twisted his wrist, and his body spun 180 degrees like a twist, and the next moment he was subdued by me on the ground. Hee, is this fun, kid? I smiled playfully at the painful look on his face. When his accomplices behind him saw that he was pinned to the ground so easily by me, they were all terrified and didn't dare to move forward. Hey, you little brats, why don't you study hard and act like big shots all day long? Let me tell you, you are still a little tender. I immediately acted like an experienced person and tried to persuade them earnestly. Brother, you let me go. The boy in the leather jacket who was pressed to the ground by me was in so much pain that sweat was oozing from his forehead. I can let you go, but you have to promise me that you won't harass Sun Ying again. When Sun Ying, who was standing aside, heard me say this, a look of gratitude rose on her face. Chapter 19 Sharpshooter. Okay, I promise, I will never dare to harass Sun Ying again. The young man in the jacket immediately begged for mercy. Only when I heard him say that did I let go of his hand. After escaping from my grasp, the young man in the jacket immediately showed an expression of joy as if he was reborn. After solving these problems, I prepared to leave with Sun Ying. Brother, what kind of gang are you in? Their shouts suddenly came from behind. When I heard them ask this, a smile appeared on the corner of my mouth. Special Forces, I said indifferently. Their voice behind me suddenly fell silent. Sun Ying, who was walking next to me, was also a little surprised when she heard that I was from the Special Forces. Brother Han, it turns out you were a Special Forces soldier before. Sun Ying said in surprise. It's all in the past. A good man doesn't talk about his past achievements. I've retired now. Yes, it was such a glorious thing, but it was only in the past, and what I have to face now is the future. The soldier is so handsome. Sun Ying looked at me excitedly. It seems that these little girls all like soldiers who look cold and serious. Looking at Sun Ying's infatuated look, I couldn't help but smile in my heart. She is really just a little girl. Who were those people just now? Why did they target you? We were chatting along the way. Oh, I think they should be the people called by my ex-boyfriend. Sun Ying said with a sigh. I was so blind that I fell in love with a man like this. The past is in the past. Don't take it too seriously. You should still look forward. Seeing Sun Ying so negative, I comforted her. Hey, let's not go home for dinner today. Sun Ying suddenly blinked her big eyes and looked at me and said. I looked at her mysterious look and felt a little surprised. Brother Han, you helped me today. Let's go and have a big meal. So after saying that, he took my hand without saying a word and walked towards the pedestrian street not far away. The pedestrian street is the favorite street for young men and women to visit. There are all kinds of shops on this street, with everything from food and drink to entertainment. I have never walked around this kind of snack street with a girl. Walking with Sun Ying, I suddenly felt a lot younger. Although it was a big meal, after arriving at the pedestrian street, Sun Ying wanted to try a little of everything when she saw the dazzling array of food stalls on the street. After walking 3 or 4 miles, her hands were already full of food. Looking at Sun Ying's satisfied smile, I felt inexplicably warm in my heart. After eating and drinking, Sun Ying took me to the amusement park. Although I felt a little resistant in my heart, I couldn't stop her from nagging me. We came to a small stall. There were several rifles on the stall, and not far away there was a row of balloons. Han Ming, aren't you a special forces soldier? You must be very good at shooting. I want the big doll that won the first prize. Can you help me win it? As Sun Ying spoke, she pouted her rosy little lips and acted coquettishly towards me. How could I, a hot-blooded man, tolerate her weak and coquettish attitude? I gave in immediately. Seeing that I agreed so readily, Sun Ying clapped her hands excitedly. That's great. I've been dreaming of having that big doll for a long time, and today my dream is going to come true. When the stall owner saw Sun Ying so excited, a hint of sarcasm flashed in his eyes. His eyes seemed to say, "TSK, I've seen many people bragging, only actions can bring truth. Boss, I want to play a game." I didn't care about the boss's mocking look and put $10 on his desk. The boss loaded the rifle with bullets and handed it to me. Sun Ying stood aside, looking expectant. When I picked up the spear, I was still a little excited. After all, I have been away from the army for so long, and being able to touch a gun again, even though it is just a toy gun, makes me very happy. I raised the rifle, then placed it in front of my eyes and aligned my eyes with the aiming hole. This toy gun is very different from a real gun and is not as standard as a real gun, but my eyesight is among the best in the entire army. Bang! After I pulled the trigger, a pink balloon on the big board in front of us exploded instantly. Sun Ying was stunned for a second, then clapped her hands excitedly. Great, great, I hit one. Sun Ying shouted excitedly, dancing with joy. Looking at Sun Ying jumping for joy, my heart was also filled with pride. There was a beautiful girl next to me, looking at me with expectation, which filled me with fighting spirit. To me, this isn't playing a game, it's fighting a battle. My fighting goal is to hit them all. When the stall owner saw that I hit one balloon, he didn't look too surprised. After all, being able to hit a balloon is a very common thing, but hitting them all is amazing. Just wait and see what a sharpshooter is. I swore to myself. Then I lowered my eyes again and aimed at the balloon on the panel in front of me. Bang! There was another explosion, and the yellow balloon next to the pink balloon was also blown up by me. Oh, great, great, you hit too, Brother Han, you are awesome. Sun Ying continued to scream excitedly, and her screams attracted a group of passers-by to come and watch. When the stall owner saw that I hit 2 in a row, he couldn't help but raise his head and look at me, but he didn't show any excessive surprise. After all, there are many people who can hit 2 balloons. Pop. 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 3, 4, 5, 6. Before I knew it, I had popped 6 balloons in a row. The passers-by watching on the side were all full of praise for me. Boy, you have great skills with a gun. Some old men showed some appreciation for me. Some young girls gathered around me, watching me pop the balloons one after another with a look of admiration on their faces. Wow, that big brother is so handsome, he can actually pop 6 balloons in a row. Some little girls said excitedly. The stall owner was also a little uneasy. After all, hitting 6 was a lot, but breaking 6 in a row was rare. He also started to look at me shooting with a nervous look on his face. Har har, I'm sorry, I'll take your big doll. I put down the gun, raised my eyes and smiled at the stall owner. The stall owner heard my joke and smiled. If you have the ability to win all of them, I will gladly give them to you. The stall owner seemed a little unconvinced that I could hit them all. After all, if one bullet misses, all the previous efforts will be wasted. To hit all the numbers, you need not only excellent eyesight, but also control. Chapter 20, One Shot, 2. I turned to look at the stall owner next to me, and a smile appeared on his face, as if he was in control of the situation. Brother Han, come on. I'm rooting for you. Sun Ying stood aside, her face full of anticipation. The stall owner looked at me as I was shot 8 times in a row, and a nervous expression appeared on his face. Seeing that there were only 5 shots left and all of them were about to hit, the people watching on the side all had solemn expressions. Hold on, young man, said a middle-aged man next to me. Handsome guy, come on, the little girls also said with anticipation. I felt very relaxed. Punching balloons. This was a piece of cake for me. The 12th shot, the trigger was pulled, and another balloon on the board burst. There was warm applause all around. That's great, everyone shouted happily. Seeing that there were only 2 shots left and they were about to hit the target, the onlookers clenched their fists and were even more nervous than I was. I aimed at the balloon on the board again. Just as I pulled the trigger and was about to fire the penultimate shot, a figure suddenly rushed out and blocked my bullet. I looked closely and saw a little boy who was only about 10 years old. Hey, little brat. Why are you running around? My brother is shooting a gun. The stall owner immediately rushed out, grabbed the little boy by the ear and scolded him. The crowd behind me watched as my shot missed the target due to the interference of the little boy, and they felt very angry. Hey, boss, how do you manage your child? I think you deliberately asked him to come out to cause trouble. A dissatisfied voice came from the onlookers behind him. Sun Ying next to me was also a little discouraged. Oh, just a little bit. Sun Ying showed a disappointed expression on her face. I'm sorry, the child is ignorant. The stall owner apologized to us repeatedly. Of course I know what tricks they are playing. I was about to win all the prizes and the big doll, so how could the stall owner be willing to give the big doll to me? So she deliberately let her child run out while I was shooting, leaving me with no bullets. Even if everyone curses, it will be useless because the rule of the game is that you can only get the big doll if all 13 bullets hit the target. Of course, the onlookers on the side also shook their heads and expressed their regret. When those people saw that they had no hope of winning the big doll, they gradually dispersed. Sun Ying's face no longer had the previous expectation. Seeing her expression like this, I naturally felt a little annoyed. What a shameless stall owner, he actually cheated me like this. I cursed him in my heart. I raised my gun again and aimed at the board. The tension on the stall owner's face disappeared. Even if I hit the last shot, I wouldn't be able to get the big doll. But he was wrong. A smug smile appeared on the corner of my mouth. The stall owner saw me continue to aim my gun at the balloon, and a smile of success appeared on his face. My eyes were fixed straight ahead, my concentration was complete, and I sneaked a glance at the sight of the toy gun, aiming at 2 balloons that were very close to each other. If you want to launch a counterattack when the last bullet is fired, you need to hit 2 at once. Hey, young man, don't fight anymore. This place is too bad. Even if you hit the target with your last shot, you won't get the big doll. The old man standing next to me rolled his eyes at the stall owner and said. A confident smile appeared on the corner of my mouth. That's right, 2 hits with 1 shot. As I pulled the trigger, a bullet flew out of the gun barrel, leaving a white stream of air in the air, and the bullet was carried towards the wooden board in front of me by the air stream. Suddenly, 2 crackling sounds were heard on the wooden board in front. I popped 2 balloons that were right next to each other on the board at the same time. Seeing this result, I looked at the stall owner provocatively. The stall owner, Sun Ying, and the onlookers around were all stunned. They would never have thought that I could hit 2 balloons with 1 shot. After a long while, Sun Ying beside me gradually reacted. Brother Han Ming, you are so awesome. Sun Ying excitedly grabbed my arm and shouted excitedly. The spectators around me also applauded me. Young man, you are a sharpshooter. You can kill 2 with 1 shot. The spectators around me looked at me with admiration. The stall owner's face was very colorful, black then red, red then black. I looked at the rich expression on his face and gave him a look of contempt. He probably didn't expect that I would fight back with the last shot. Boss, where is our big doll? Sun Ying snorted at the stall owner and spread out her hands to ask him for money. Although the stall owner was extremely reluctant, he had to do it because there were so many spectators around and the most taboo thing in their business was not to break their promise. So he could only reluctantly hand the big doll to Sun Ying's hands. The spectators around me dispersed one after another when they saw that we had won the prizes. When I left, I was still talking about the legendary experience I had just created. Brother Han Ming, your shooting skills are amazing. Sun Ying held the big doll and looked at me with admiration in her eyes. I smiled modestly and said, it's no big deal, just a trivial skill. But I could feel that Sun Ying's attitude towards me seemed to have changed more. Every time she looked at me, there was a happy smile in her eyes. When you missed your shot just now, I was so angry. That kid was clearly ordered by the stall owner to get out. I wanted to curse at him. When Sun Ying said this, a hint of anger appeared on her face. Fortunately, I am more skilled than others, otherwise I would have missed this big doll. Brother Han Ming, you are much better than the instructors in our school. Seeing how confident I was, Sun Ying looked at me and said with a smile. Really? I asked her with a chuckle. Their shooting skills are not as good as yours. This is the first time I've seen someone shoot a gun and hit the target every time. When Sun Ying said these words, her admiration for me was evident in her words. I think this little girl has a crush on me. Before I knew it, the sun had set. As it was getting dark, I took Sun Ying back to our shared apartment. On this day, all her ex-boyfriends stopped bothering her, which made her relax a lot. So he was in a very good mood and suggested making something delicious for me as soon as he got home. Although Sun Ying is young, her cooking skills are amazing. The hibiscus cake she gave me last time was so soft, sweet and non-greasy, it tasted like something made in the palace. I couldn't help but be intoxicated by this delicious taste. Chapter 21, Conspiracy. As soon as Sun Ying came home, she ran into the kitchen and prepared something delicious for me. I just felt a sense of relief in my heart. So I sat in the living room and turned on TV to watch. After a while, a fragrance wafted out of the kitchen. When I smelled the aroma, my appetite was immediately aroused and I wanted to feast on it. The rich fragrance kept lingering around me, making me feel a little uneasy. I couldn't suppress my curiosity, so I stood up and walked towards the kitchen. Sun Ying was busy in the kitchen. The chopping board was filled with various dishes, which looked very tempting. Hey, don't come in. The smell of oil smoke will bother you in a while. I was planning to help, but was chased out by Sun Ying. There was no choice but to go back and sit on the sofa in the living room. I turned the channel out of boredom and started watching it. Suddenly a news push popped up on the TV news. It turned out to be about veterans. When I saw these words, I immediately sat up straight and stared at the TV screen intently. According to relevant departments, veterans are now facing difficulties in finding employment, so the government has introduced a new policy. If veterans want to start a business, they can enjoy a 30% subsidy from the state. I was shocked when I saw the news. This shows that the country has taken great care of veterans. I was very happy. It seems that now is the spring for veterans. Just as I was concentrating on watching the news, I heard Sun Ying scream from the kitchen. I immediately ran into the kitchen. What's wrong? Sun Ying curled up in the corner in fear, her face pale. Woo-woo, there is a snake. Sun Ying said tremblingly, pointing to a hidden place behind the refrigerator. What? How could there be a snake here? I was confused. Sweat broke out on Sun Ying's forehead and her eyes were filled with fear. Snakes, all snakes. Sun Ying stuttered. I followed the direction she pointed and walked slowly over. Walking to the refrigerator, I looked into the hidden place. Sure enough, there were long red and black snakes lurking in the darkness. Some long snakes kept moving their bodies and spitting out tongues from their mouths. Seeing this scene, I was even more confused. Why did so many snakes suddenly appear? Get them away quickly. Woo-woo. Sun Ying covered her eyes and screamed. It seemed that she was really scared and even dropped the kitchen knife on the ground. I immediately went to the bedroom and got 2 clothes-adding rods. The stick has a small fork on the top, which is handy for grabbing the snake's head and preventing it from moving. Fortunately, these snakes are blue-black in color, and you can tell at a glance that they are not poisonous snakes. I clamped the snakes' heads with forks and they couldn't move. Then I picked them up with another fork and threw them out of the window. After repeating this several times, I finally cleared all the snakes on the ground. After getting rid of all the snakes, I walked to Sun Ying's side and helped the distraught Sun Ying up. She was so scared that her hands and feet were cold and her face was pale and bloodless. Looking at Sun Ying like this, I felt pity for her. It's okay. I threw all those cars out. Don't be afraid. Unexpectedly, as soon as I finished speaking, Sun Ying actually threw herself into my arms. She started crying in my arms. I couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, but then I reached out and stroked her head to comfort her. Don't be afraid, it's okay. I patted Sun Ying's shoulder gently and comforted her. But Sun Ying didn't hear any of my persuasion. She buried her face in my chest and burst into tears. I can also understand her fear at this moment. After all, as a girl, seeing so many snakes in front of her all of a sudden would definitely scare her. But I feel like there's something wrong here. These snakes didn't look like they swam in on their own, but rather like someone had let them in on purpose. After all, it is impossible for so many snakes to appear in one place at the same time. Miss Sun, do you have any spare keys in this shared apartment? Seeing that Sun Ying's emotions had gradually calmed down, I asked her. When Sun Ying heard me ask this, she couldn't help but raise her eyes and stared at me in surprise. You mean you suspect someone deliberately threw a snake in to scare me? Sun Ying looked at me and blurted out. I nodded. It's very possible. After all, these snakes appeared in the room at the same time. This is a bit abnormal. It is very likely man-made. After hearing what I said, tears in Sun Ying's eyes rolled down like beads from a broken string. So someone wanted to scare me on purpose. Sun Ying said, gritting her teeth. Who the hell is this bastard? He's so despicable as to release snakes into my house. Sun Ying was probably frightened. The elegant demeanor she had in college was gone at this moment. Could it be my ex-boyfriend, that bastard? He said he wouldn't let me go. Brother Han Ming, do you think it could be him? Sun Ying seemed to remember something, grabbed my arm and said nervously. Well. Sun Ying, listen to me. There is no evidence pointing out that your ex-boyfriend did it. So now you have to cheer up and investigate this matter thoroughly. It's him, it must be him, he is a lunatic. Sun Ying's emotions were very unstable at the moment. After coming to this conclusion, she became even more manic. Don't get angry yet. If it really is your ex-boyfriend, then let's go and confront him face to face. I grabbed Sun Ying and said seriously. Brother Han Ming, he won't let me go. Sun Ying said as she started crying again. I looked at him in such a crazy state, and felt pity for him. Oh. How could such a pretty and lovely girl meet such a bad guy like her ex-boyfriend? It's okay, don't cry, okay? It's not good to hurt your eyes if you cry. I continued to sit next to Sun Ying and comfort her. Before we knew it, we were hugging each other tightly. At this moment, the two of us hugged each other, just like a couple. Suddenly Sun Ying raised her big watery eyes and looked at me, Brother Han Ming. Sun Ying called out to me sweetly. When I heard Sun Ying call me brother, a strong desire suddenly arose in my heart. Fortunately, the clothes covered my lower body, so no one could notice anything unusual. For a normal man, being able to be in the same room with a young and beautiful girl is too tempting. I looked at Sun Ying's eyes, which were slightly swollen from crying, and I couldn't help but slap him in the face. Chapter 22, Testing. Who are you? Why are you arresting me? I yelled while struggling hard. Stop talking nonsense and follow us. The person who restrained my arm yelled at me. Then I was dragged away by a group of people and put into a van. Although if I fight back hard, I still have a chance to escape from their hands. But if that's the case, I won't be able to find Sun Ying's whereabouts. So in order to paralyze the other party first and make them mistakenly believe that I no longer pose any danger, they will relax their guard and give me an opportunity to take advantage. I sat in the van and didn't put up much resistance. After a while, they took me to my destination. Get out of the car. The big man with a rough voice next to me kicked me. My face was covered with a cloth, so I couldn't tell the direction. After he kicked me out of the car, I felt dazed. Judging from the situation around us, there should be a lot of them. This makes me even more confused. Yes, you are just a student in an ordinary university, how could you attract so many people? And from the way they spoke, they sounded like gangsters. I seemed to be brought into a room, and at this moment I could only use my ears to identify the surrounding environment. Listening to the echo of my footsteps, I can feel that this house is very spacious. Moreover, the leather shoes made a crisp sound when they stepped on the floor, so the floor must be paved with marble tiles. After a series of observations with my ears, I found that the owner of the place they brought me to was either rich or noble. Are you Han Ming? A solemn voice suddenly asked. When I heard this voice, a look of shock flashed across my face. After all, it is rare for a man who is the leader of a kidnapping gang to have such a gentle voice. Why do you recognize me? What did you bring me here for? Did you also capture my friend? What is your purpose in capturing my friend? Although I can't see, my mouth is very smart. You little brat. How dare you talk to their master like that? The big man with a rough voice who was pushing me back suddenly kicked me hard in the back. I suddenly lost my balance and fell to the ground. Young man, you are here today just for Sun Ying. The old man spoke again slowly. What on earth are you doing? How did Sun Ying offend you? Why do you want to kidnap her? Where is Sun Ying? Where is she now? I was filled with rage, and now that they were detaining me like a prisoner, I felt extremely miserable and uncomfortable. Boy, since you came here for Sun Ying, that's easy to deal with, the old man spoke again. What do you mean? I frowned slightly, a hint of displeasure flashing across my face. What do you mean? Don't you know that Sun Ying is in my hands now? If you want to save her, you have to sacrifice your life. As soon as the old man finished speaking, I suddenly heard the sound of a cane falling to the ground with great force. I have no grudge against you, why do you want to take my life? I was completely puzzled. HMPH, stop talking nonsense here. In a word, do you want to rescue Sun Ying or leave now? He clearly wanted me to answer multiple choice questions. But I never like doing this kind of multiple choice questions. What if I say I want both? I raised my face, and a barely perceptible smile flashed across the corner of my mouth. What do you mean? The old man asked warily. Did they think they could lock me up with just 2 men? They really underestimated the strength of our special forces. I suddenly raised my head and chuckled. You guys think you can stop me? After saying that, I immediately turned around, and used the mutual effect of force to fight force with force, converting all the force they used on me into moves to attack them. I only heard 2 booms, and the 2 big men who were holding my arms fell to the ground. There was silence in the hall for a few seconds, and then the old man's scream was heard. Stop him quickly, the old man shouted in my direction. Stinky old man, stop meddling in other people's business. Let me see your true face. After I finished speaking, I quickly took off the blindfold on my face. After taking off the blindfold, I looked around and found a row of bodyguards lying on the ground. I pretended to be indifferent. That's all the strength you guys have. I chuckled and said nothing. Hey! How can you sit here? While I was fighting with the old man's men, I didn't realize that there was a woman sitting next to the old man. When I turned around and took a closer look, I was stunned. That woman was none other than Sun Ying, who I spent every day with. Sun Ying. I can't help but be shocked. Why are you here? I asked several questions in a row, and I was so surprised that I couldn't close my mouth. Stop fighting, all of you. Sun Ying suddenly yelled at the big men behind me. What surprised me even more was that those big guys actually stopped. I looked at Sun Ying in shock. What is going on? Brother Han, thank you for coming. Sun Ying walked up to me and looked at me affectionately. This. I knew that Sun Ying was pointing at the old man and then at those big men, and was a little incoherent for a moment. When Sun Ying saw me like this, she couldn't help but smile coquettishly. Har, I'm sorry, I wasn't kidnapped. Sun Ying looked at me and said apologetically. Then, what is your relationship with them? When Sun Ying heard me ask this, she immediately walked back to the old man. Grandpa, this is what I told you about, my savior, Han Ming. Sun Ying pulled out the old man's arm and said with joy. What's going on? I thought the person who kidnapped Sun Ying turned out to be Sun Ying's grandfather. I suddenly felt confused. Could it be that I was fooled? I was suddenly at a loss whether to laugh or cry. Brother Han, Grandpa is worried that I'm alone outside and sharing a house with a strange man. He is worried about me, so he wants to try you. Sun Ying walked up to me and explained to me. So this is all just a test. A look of surprise flashed across my face. Luckily, I didn't touch Sun Ying last night, otherwise I would be in big trouble. I secretly rejoiced in my heart. Looking at the way Sun Ying's grandfather was dressed and the decorations in their home, I knew they were a wealthy family. They could even afford to hire bodyguards, so they must be from a very prominent family. I analyzed this in my mind. Chapter 23 Fire Me. Young man, after a series of investigations, I think you are a good person, Sun Ying's grandfather said to me with a smile. After hearing the praise from Grandpa Sun Ying, I felt helpless and a little amused. It turns out this is just a test. I sighed helplessly in my heart. Seeing that I looked exhausted, Sun Ying pulled my hand apologetically and said, "Brother Han Ming, don't be angry." How could I dare to get angry? This was a kidnapping and intimidation. How could I, a veteran with no background, dare to offend such a powerful and wealthy man? Then Sun Ying took me to visit her family's luxurious villa. It turns out that Sun Ying's grandfather was the chairman of a listed company, and Sun Ying's parents died when he was very young. So Sun Ying was raised by his grandfather. His grandfather treated him as the apple of his eye and doted on him. But Sun Ying, who has always been a maverick, decided to live an independent life. So I left home and lived alone, and later met my boyfriend in college. Unexpectedly, this boyfriend had a bad character, so Sun Ying broke up with him soon. But Sun Ying's boyfriend kept pestering her, so I had to come to her rescue. When I heard Sun Ying's story, I felt incredible. I didn't expect that I would bet on a rich lady without knowing it. I could have encountered such a low chance. I can buy lottery tickets with such luck. I secretly sighed in my heart. However, as a rich lady, Sun Ying has been looking at me with a sparkle in her eyes ever since I saved her. I'm really sorry about what happened today. I didn't know about it at first. Sun Ying saw that I didn't say anything and thought I was still angry. I chuckled and shook my head. I can understand your grandfather's good intentions. You are his only relative, so he is worried about you. Hearing what I said, Sun Ying showed a happy smile on her face. Brother Han Ming, thank you for your understanding. Damn it. My face suddenly changed, and I suddenly thought of Li Shuang. Miss Sun Ying, I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. Before Sun Ying could react after I finished speaking, I turned around and ran out without looking back. I haven't been back to the company for such a long time, and I just hung up the phone with Li Shuang. I couldn't help but have a bad feeling in my heart. Is Li Shuang really going to fire me? I felt uneasy. I hurried, and before I knew it I was downstairs at the company. After taking a look at the skyscraper in front of me, I took a deep breath and walked into the company with gritted teeth. As I got closer to Li Shuang's office, my heart beat faster and faster. The scene of Li Shuang swearing at me has already appeared in my mind. I was standing at the door of Li Shuang's office and was about to push it open when I suddenly heard Li Shuang's voice from inside and my hand stopped immediately. "Mr. Wang, did you miss me?" Li Shuang said in a charming voice. "Har har, how can you be so mean? You're so annoying. You even want to watch others striptease." Li Shuang seemed to be talking on the phone with someone inside. And listening to our conversation, the amount of information is too huge. I muttered to myself. Han Ming, is Vice President Li here? Just as I was leaning against the door and eavesdropping, a voice came from behind me. I was startled and immediately turned my head with a resentful look and glared at the person who spoke. "Damn it! You are causing trouble for me at this time." I cursed fiercely in my heart. Now Li Shuang knew that I was eavesdropping on her outside the door. There was no choice but to go in. Vice President Li. Looking at Li Shuang's expressionless face and the way he sat upright, I smiled awkwardly. Li Shuang sneered, "Okay, Han Ming, that's fine. Are you deliberately trying to find fault with me outside the door?" "Vice President Li, you misunderstood. I just arrived." I immediately raised my hands and swore to the sky. "HMPH. Who are you trying to fool? Needless to say, you are fired." Li Shuang rolled his eyes at me and said coldly. "R." I was shocked. She really wanted to fire me. "Vice President Li, you can't do this. I have followed you these days. Even if I haven't made any contributions, I have worked hard," I said with a resentful look on my face. "What hard work? Ever since you came to the company, you have been causing trouble for me all day long. You even skipped work, and when I called you, you refused to answer." Li Shuang yelled at me angrily. "Vice President Li, I'm sorry, I just had something to do, so I hung up on your person." I sighed helplessly. This woman is really petty. She has to pick a fuss with me over such a small matter. HMPH. Is that your reason? Li Shuang didn't seem to accept my apology at all. "Hurry up and pack up and leave," Li Shuang said impatiently. She seemed to really want me to get out of here quickly. Maybe she's afraid that I'll leak her private affairs. But I am not that kind of person. When I said I would make her privacy public in the company, it was just to scare her. Vice President Lee, please give me another chance. I can't leave the company now. If I leave, I won't be able to see the boss's wife anymore. No matter what, I can't let Li Shuang fire me. You're so annoying. Li Shuang suddenly looked at his watch with an impatient look on his face. Then she stood up, holding her bag as if she was going out. Vice President Lee, you haven't listened to my explanation yet. I immediately stood in front of Li Shuang and said anxiously, pack your things and leave before I come back. Li Shuang shook my hand off fiercely and ran out of the door. How could she be so cruel? Looking at her resolutely leaving back, my heart ached. After all, I have fought hooligans for her in bars and helped her out of trouble at drinking parties. How could she not be grateful at all? I couldn't help but feel heartbroken, but when I thought about leaving the boss's wife, I felt unwilling. After thinking it over again and again, I decided to catch up with him and explain to Li Shuang. I don't believe that I can't impress her with all this persuasion. Thinking of this, I immediately walked out of the office and chased after Li Shuang. Li Shuang had already walked out of the company. When I arrived at the company gate and was about to call her, a black extended sports car suddenly stopped in front of Li Shuang. Before I could react, a man in black had already dragged Li Shuang into the car. Could it be another kidnapping? I had a bad feeling when I saw this situation. Although Li Shuang's usual behavior is abominable, I can't just stand by and watch him die. Seeing the sports car speeding away, I immediately rushed to the parking lot and drove my Land Rover to chase it. Chapter 24 Filming. Fortunately, I have been driving for many years in the army. Even though the traffic was very congested today, I was able to break out of the traffic after dodging for a while. I followed the black sports car in front of me. At first, the sports car was driving in the city, but slowly it turned into the road leading to the countryside. Seeing this trend, I felt anxious. Is someone trying to kidnap Li Shuang and threaten the company? I thought to myself. Rich women like Li Shuang are very likely to become targets of criminals. Maybe after they kidnapped Li Shuang, they called the company and asked for tens of millions of dollars, and then ran away. I've seen this kind of routine many times. After all, I have served in the special forces. How can I allow such a thing to happen under my nose? I looked intently at the sports car in front of me and followed them closely. I have solved cases like this before when I was in the army. It is not uncommon for some criminals on the border to kidnap wealthy businessmen. Soon their car was on the country road. It seems that they are really going to the countryside. I thought to myself. Generally, kidnappers will not leave hostages in crowded places like cities. They will all find a secluded place where they are not easily discovered by others and difficult for the police to find. As their car drove along, it soon arrived in front of a dilapidated factory building. Are they going to tie Li Shuang up here? I was curious. After the car stopped, the driver and the man in black got out. They were wearing large black sunglasses that covered half of their faces, so it was impossible to see their appearance clearly. But looking at their figures and behavior, I had a vague feeling that they were all trained people. Could it be another international bodyguard? I thought to myself. After a while, Li Shuang also got out of the car. She was not tied up, but it could be seen that her face was very pale, as if she was overly frightened. Moreover, his body seemed to be still shaking, his feet were a little unstable, and he was almost blown down by the wind several times. Looking at Li Shuang's cowardly look, a sarcastic smile appeared on my face. HMPH. You are always yelling at employees in the company, and now you've been kidnapped. You're scared. I smiled smugly in my heart. Because we were too far away, I didn't hear what the men in black said to Li Shuang, but soon Li Shuang followed their footsteps and walked into the dilapidated factory building in front of him. When I saw them go in, I stopped the car and got out immediately. Then I looked around and found that there were almost no residential houses near this dilapidated factory building. It looked like it had been abandoned for a long time. This is indeed a hiding place, I thought to myself. Then I quietly ran into the dilapidated factory building in front of me. Having entered the factory gate, a very spacious yard appeared in front of us. The yard was covered with fallen leaves and a lot of sundries. It looked like no one had lived there for a long time. The walls of the factory were all made of glass, some of which was broken and covered with a thick layer of dust, blocking their view inside the factory. I tiptoed over to the dusty windows. Then I looked through a small broken opening. There were 7 or 8 sturdy men in black clothes inside. They all wore sunglasses on their faces and suits. They had strong bodies and looked difficult to deal with. The factory was empty except for a soft sofa in the middle, on which sat a bald man with his back to me. There was smoke rising from his head, as if he was smoking a cigarette. I think he should be the leader of these men in black. Boss Lee. You said I asked you here and there, but you ignored me and insisted that my men send a car to pick you up. The bald man sitting on the sofa spoke. Li Shuang was facing me. Her face was pale and her lips were trembling. She looked very frightened. Mr. Wang, please, don't do this. Li Shuang said tremblingly, his big eyes filled with tears, as if he was about to cry in the next second. The bald man suddenly laughed out loud twice. Har har, Li Yongqiang's sister is so beautiful, but he still wants to hide her. Of course he has to take a photo and share it with everyone. The bald man puffed on the cigarette in his mouth as he spoke. Hearing him say this, Li Shuang couldn't help but bite her lip in hatred. Mr. Wang, don't go too far, it's illegal for you to kidnap me like this. Li Shuang suddenly became bolder, holding his head high, looking as if he was sacred and inviolable. Illegal? What I do is an illegal business. The bald man snorted coldly and said with disdain. Li Shuang was immediately furious. If you dare to touch me, my brother will not let you go. Har har, that cowardly Yongqiang, what dare he do to me? I tell you, you are in my hands now, and you have to take pictures when I want you to. After the bald man finished speaking, he picked up a piece of clothing from the sofa and threw it fiercely in front of Li Shuang. I vaguely saw that it was a pink dress with a transparent V-neck, which was obviously a sexy style. Oh my god. Mr. Wang actually asked Li Shuang to wear sexy clothes to film. I couldn't help but be shocked. Although Li Shuang is beautiful and has a figure comparable to that of a bikini girl, how can I bear the thought that she is forced to film in front of these obscene men? Li Shuang is right, they are breaking the law. I won't wear it. He clenched his teeth tightly, looking angry. Har har, aren't you afraid that I will leak those photos of yours? The bald man said with a cold smile. You despicable villain, you actually sent paparazzi to take pictures of me across from my house. Li Shuang cursed, biting his lip. Har har, Miss Li, don't you know that as a businessman, I have no bottom line, said the bald man with a shameless and glorious look. As soon as he said this, Li Shuang started to tremble. What about today? I invite you here. If you are willing to cooperate, I won't do anything out of line. It's just taking some photos. It's very simple, said the bald man with a sneer. Don't even think about it. Do you think I will let you control me like those peripheral models? Li Shuang held his head high, with a look of both strength and death on his face. I was looking at Li Shuang's expression from outside the window, and I couldn't help but feel emotional. I never expected Li Shuang to have such a strong temper. She is simply a modern version of a chaste heroine. Thinking of this, my sense of justice was instantly awakened. I must save Li Shuang, I swore to myself. Chapter 25, A Hero Saves a Beauty. You'd better be sensible. You know that in this remote place, if something happens to you, no one will care, right? Seeing that Li Shuang refused to cooperate, the bald man deliberately threatened Li Shuang. What do you want to do? Li Shuang looked at the bald man warily. I don't want to do anything, I just hope Miss Li can cooperate with me. As long as you can help our entertainment company solve the current cash flow problem, we can talk about anything, said the bald man with a smile. Suddenly, the men in black clothes and sunglasses who were standing next to Li Shuang suddenly walked up to Li Shuang and grabbed her arms. What are you going to do? Li Shuang shouted in fear. She screamed loudly and tried to break free from the men. Since you don't cooperate, we can only use force. The bald man sneered. When Li Shuang saw that they were about to come up and tear off his clothes, he screamed in fear. Help! Help! I saw this scene outside the window, and the anger in my heart suddenly surged up. How can this be outrageous? How can they treat a girl like this? They are really a bunch of scum and social scum. I cursed them harshly, then jumped up and kicked the glass in front of me open with a flying kick. Crash! In an instant, the sound of glass breaking was heard in the factory. The men in black clothes and sunglasses all looked towards me. When Li Shuang saw me jumping in from the window, a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. Han Ming, why is it you? Li Shuang was surprised and happy, and shouted at me. I glanced at her, then turned my gaze to the bald man on the sofa. Vice President Li, I'm here to save you. I stared at the bald man and said, gritting my teeth. The bald man looked at me appraisingly for a few seconds, then laughed with disdain. Har har. Where did this brat come from? How dare he meddle in our business? The bald man spoke in a low voice with a hint of murderous intent in his words. Special Forces 731st Regiment, codenamed Gintama. I spoke in a deep voice with sharp eyes. The bald man didn't show any excessive surprise on his face. However, the expressions of the men in black clothes and sunglasses around him changed instantly after hearing my introduction. It seems that these people are knowledgeable and know my background. Har har, what's so great about a lousy soldier? The bald man still said to me with disdain. I sneered, really? Then today, Grandpa will let you see what a soldier is. As soon as I finished speaking, I stepped hard and kept my eyes fixed on those men in black clothes and sunglasses. The next moment, I kicked my left foot back hard, and then my whole body shot forward like a bullet. The men in black clothes and sunglasses were stunned by my lightning-fast figure. Before they could react, I had already flashed in front of them, and the next moment, my fists as big as sandbags were already hitting them. R. A man in black clothes and sunglasses standing on Li Shuang's left suddenly screamed. He screamed while covering his head, which was hit hard by my punch. The men in black clothes and sunglasses next to him were all shocked when they saw this scene. It took them a long time to react and want to fight back. As their fists swung at me, I stood still. When Li Shuang saw their fists were about to hit me, he immediately shouted, "Be careful." I still had a calm expression on my face, but a premeditated smile appeared at the corner of my mouth. Just as the sound of their punches returned to my ears, I quickly squatted down. They didn't expect me to dodge at all, and both of their fists missed and hit each other. I looked at the two of them being knocked down by their respective fists and smiled with disdain. You are too slow. I raised my middle finger provocatively at the men in black clothes and sunglasses lying on the ground. Although they had unwilling looks on their faces, seeing my skills, they didn't dare to come forward to challenge me again. When I came to my senses and was about to deal with the bald man sitting on the sofa, suddenly I realized that he had already run away and disappeared. Damn! Retreating so quickly. I couldn't help but sneer and muttered to myself. Han Ming, I'm glad you're here today, otherwise, I would. Li Shuang grabbed my hand with an excited look on his face and said, crying. I looked at Li Shuang like this and felt a little surprised. You know, Li Shuang is a decisive leader in the company, but now he is crying like a child in front of me. Such a drastic contrast will definitely shock outsiders if they know about it. It's okay, let's leave quickly. Seeing Li Shuang crying in front of me, I immediately comforted her. I noticed that the way Li Shuang looked at me had changed a lot. She had just fallen into a desperate situation, and I rushed out to save her. In her mind, I am like a superhero now. Har har, this is really a blessing in disguise. I thought secretly in my heart. If Li Shuang hadn't scolded me and wanted to fire me, I wouldn't have chased him out. If I hadn't chased him out, I wouldn't have discovered that Li Shuang had been kidnapped. Han Ming, I'm sorry, I really shouldn't have fired you. Li Shuang seemed to realize that his previous attitude towards me was too bad, so he spoke to me with an apologetic look on his face. I immediately put on a generous look and said with a smile, actually, I don't really take it to heart. Hee, now Li Shuang probably won't fire me anymore, right? I felt happy. After this incident, Li Shuang was so scared that his legs became weak. I wanted to pull her away, but she fell to the ground after taking just 2 steps. Seeing his weak appearance, I suddenly felt a sense of pity for him. Vice President Li, let me carry you on my back. I said gently, looking at Li Shuang, who was sitting on the ground with a weak face. Li Shuang looked at me, hesitated for a moment, and then nodded. It seems that Li Shuang really doesn't hate me anymore. If it were in the past, if I just touched her slightly, she would probably scold me. I carried Li Shuang on my back, and her soft body pressed tightly against my back. Smelling the strong scent of her perfume, I felt intoxicated. When my hands grabbed her 2 slender legs, she moved shyly but did not resist strongly. Har har, that's great. The psychological defense that Li Shuang had set up for me seemed to have collapsed. I was secretly happy in my heart. Chapter 26, Ruthless. I sent Li Shuang home safely, and when I was about to leave, Li Shuang suddenly grabbed my hand. I couldn't help but turn around and look at Li Shuang in surprise. Vice President Li, what's wrong? Is there anything else? There was a hint of gratitude on Li Shuang's face. Thank you. Li Shuang smiled at me. Looking at her charming face and beautiful smile, my heart melted instantly. I stared at her face in a daze. What's wrong? Li Shuang asked curiously when he saw me looking dazed. I smiled awkwardly. Nothing, Vice President Li, if there's nothing else, I'll go back first. After I said that, I planned to leave Li Shuang's house. Looking at her beautiful appearance, and the loving look she gave me, I was afraid that I could not control myself. Don't go yet. My foot is sprained. You should take me to see a doctor. Li Shuang said with his mouth open and a look of grievance. I can't resist women's coquetry, especially beautiful women like Li Shuang. Yeah. After hesitating for a while, I nodded and agreed to Li Shuang. Help me. Li Shuang said with a smile when he heard that I agreed, and spread his hands to me. I have never seen Li Shuang like this before. I stretched out my hand excitedly and held Li Shuang's soft little hand. The moment I touched Li Shuang's little hand, my blood boiled in my heart. How soft! I cried secretly in my heart. Li Shuang doesn't resist my touch much now. Seeing that she did not resist, I boldly held her little hand tightly in my palm. Then I exerted force with both hands, and Li Shuang stood up from the sofa and snuggled into my chest. I hugged Li Shuang's shoulders with trepidation. A faint fragrance emanated from her body, lingering around me, and I couldn't help but feel intoxicated. Vice President Li, what kind of incense are you using? Why does it smell so good? I smelled her fragrance with great enjoyment. When Li Shuang heard me ask this, she smiled brightly. Why, do you think it smells good? Li Shuang said with a sweet smile. I nodded, yeah. Han Ming, are you interested in me? Li Shuang suddenly changed the subject and looked at me with burning eyes. When I heard him ask this, I opened my eyes alertly. Vice President Li, I? She is as beautiful as a flower, with fair skin, long legs, and she is also a rich second generation. Which man would not be intoxicated by her? But before I could finish, Li Shuang pushed me away harshly. A hint of disgust suddenly appeared on her smiling face. Humph, I knew you were a scumbag. You rely on your skills and the fact that you saved me, and now you think you can covet my beauty. Li Shuang said arrogantly. I stared at her in shock for a long time. She was so obedient to me just now, why did she suddenly change her attitude? Women's hearts are like the sea's needle. I sighed helplessly in my heart. Han Ming, I warn you, don't let anyone know what happened today. If I find out that you told anyone, I will never let you go. Li Shuang suddenly grabbed my collar and threatened me viciously. I laughed helplessly twice. Vice President Li, don't worry, I will never tell anyone about this, as long as you don't fire me. Oh. I couldn't help but sigh in my heart. How can this woman be so ungrateful? HMPH. A toad wants to eat swan flesh, but he doesn't even take a piss to look at himself and see what he looks like. You said to me with a look of contempt. I was immediately filled with anger after being humiliated by her in this way. Good things don't come easy to good people. I should have ignored her earlier. I just let her be blackmailed by those people. It had nothing to do with me. I felt a little regretful that I went to save Li Shuang. Vice President Li, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. I glanced at Li Shuang coldly and then said. When Li Shuang heard me say this, he stopped me again. Wait a minute. Li Shuang stared at me with her big eyes. I looked at Li Shuang in confusion. Vice President Li, is there anything else? After this lesson, I decided not to care about Li Shuang no matter what happens to her. Have you been a soldier before? Li Shuang suddenly asked me. Yes, Vice President Li. I responded indifferently. Li Shuang glanced at me suspiciously. I never realized you were a special forces soldier. Li Shuang chuckled at me twice. I don't know why, but when I see Li Shuang's innocent and harmless smile, I feel a sense of disgust. Please protect me every day from now on. Li Shuang said softly. Hearing her say this, I looked at her in some surprise. After this incident, I feel that I really need a personal bodyguard. Since you have been a soldier and are so skilled, please stay by my side and protect me. Li Shuang spoke to me in a commanding tone. How could I refuse? As long as she didn't fire me, that would be good enough. Got it, Vice President Li, I said to Li Shuang. But the next second, Li Shuang suddenly took out a notebook and handed it to me. These are the items I need to buy today, buy them for me quickly. What? I was surprised when I heard Li Shuang say this. Please, I'm a bodyguard, not a nanny. Why do you have to give me the task of buying things? What? You don't want to do it? Li Shuang raised his face with a hint of threat in his eyes. I want to. I reluctantly took the notebook from Li Shuang. Hey, as long as I don't leave the boss lady, I'm willing to do anything. I swore secretly in my heart. After you buy the things, come back and cook for me, and then you can go back. Li Shuang said and turned around and sat on the sofa. Li Shuang's words were like a bolt from the blue. My face turned red, then dark, and then red again in an instant. They asked me to be a bodyguard, I put up with it. They asked me to go shopping, I put up with it, but now they want me to cook. A raging anger suddenly burned in my heart. Vice President Li, I'm a bodyguard and I can't cook. I tried to suppress the anger in my heart, but my face looked very ugly. But Li Shuang seemed to be deliberately making things difficult for me, really. Then you can learn it. After Li Shuang finished speaking, he stopped looking at me and picked up the remote control, turned on the TV, and began to watch it with relish. Looking at Li Shuang sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed, I was angry but dared not say anything. But for the sake of the boss's wife, I still endured Li Shuang's troubles. Chapter 27 Weird Woman. After helping Li Shuang buy the items listed in the notebook, I hurried back. Li Shuang looked at me coming back with large and small bags of things, and a smug smile appeared on his face. Not bad, you're quite capable. Li Shuang praised me with a smile. However, after experiencing the humiliation from Li Shuang, I am no longer interested in his compliments. I walked into the kitchen with an expressionless face and started cooking for Li Shuang. As an excellent special forces soldier, he naturally has to be proficient in all kinds of martial arts. Cooking is a piece of cake for me. Half an hour later, I had prepared a sumptuous dinner. Li Shuang looked at the table full of delicious food that was steaming and wafting with fragrance, with a hint of curiosity in his big eyes. Han Ming, you're really good. You're a grown man, but you can actually cook. I remained indifferent to Li Shuang's praise. Vice President Li, if there is nothing else, I will leave first. Now that all the tasks assigned by Li Shuang have been completed, I have no reason to stay here any longer. And I don't like being with such a neurotic woman. Who knows, Li Shuang might scold me badly for something in the next second. When Li Shuang heard that I was about to leave, he immediately stopped me. Hey, Han Ming, didn't I tell you to be my bodyguard and protect me? Li Shuang shouted at my back. I turned around and looked at Li Shuang helplessly. I'm a bodyguard, not an escort. I reiterated my profession once again. I don't care anyway. I want you to stay and have dinner with me today. Li Shuang wanted to show her strong side in the company again. When I heard Li Shuang say this, I almost vomited blood out of anger. Vice President Li, I have no obligation to have dinner with you. I feel like if Li Shuang continues to act unreasonably like this, I really won't be able to control my emotions. When Li Shuang saw that I had a stern face, the smile on his face gradually disappeared, replaced by a cold expression. She slammed the bowl on the table and glared at me fiercely. Han Ming, is this how you talk to your boss? Li Shuang put his hands on his hips and yelled at me unhappily. Vice President Li, I have completed everything you just asked me to do. What else do you want me to do? I said angrily, glaring at Li Shuang. Hey! Han Ming! Don't think that just because you saved me you can yell at me. Li Shuang was so angry that his lips trembled. Vice President Li, you are really too aggressive. I said stiffly. When Li Shuang becomes gentle, she is like a quiet flower, blooming quietly between heaven and earth. But once she got angry, her beautiful face instantly became hideous and distorted, with a cold expression like a witch in a fairy tale. I'd better go back first. I stood at the door and hesitated for a moment, then said to Li Shuang. Just as I was about to close the door and walk out, Li Shuang suddenly shouted in the room. Hey! If you don't eat with me, I'll fire you. Li Shuang yelled at me as I was standing outside the door. When I heard Li Shuang say this, I couldn't help but sneer. Vice President Li usually acts decisively and vigorously in the company. But why is it that when he gets home he acts like a grumpy child? What do you mean? I really couldn't bear it anymore, so I turned around and yelled at Li Shuang. Li Shuang didn't expect that I would dare to speak to her like that, and her expression froze. Han Ming, you actually dared to yell at me. Li Shuang was stunned for a long time before he came to his senses and pointed at me, saying unhappily. Looking at her pouting little mouth due to anger and the puffy expression on her face, I suddenly stood in front of her. Li Shuang was startled and shrank back unconsciously. What are you going to do? Li Shuang stared at me with her big eyes with a vigilant look. What are you doing? If you dare to yell at me again, I will drink and quit, and expose your affairs to the public. I sneered and said to Li Shuang. When Li Shuang heard me say this, he suddenly became angry and pointed at me and yelled. I rolled my eyes in annoyance. Just think about it. If other people knew that Vice President Li, who is usually dignified and virtuous, was forced to take some low-class photos. Stop talking. Li Shuang suddenly covered his head with a look of horror and yelled. Seeing her like this, I was a little surprised. Looking at Li Shuang's expression, it seemed as if he had suffered some kind of stimulation. After a while, Li Shuang suddenly raised his pair of red eyes and stared at me. Aren't you a soldier? Soldiers are the most righteous. Do you really want to make my photo shoot public? Li Shuang smiled disdainfully, seeming to despise my identity as a special forces soldier. When I heard Li Shuang say this, I felt a little regretful. Li Shuang is right. As a soldier, I should uphold justice. Han Ming, but you actually hooked up with my sister-in-law. Li Shuang suddenly changed the subject and stared at me coldly. Why did she suddenly bring up this matter? A look of astonishment flashed across my face. Vice President Li, you misunderstood. Between me and the boss lady. But before I could finish, Li Shuang interrupted me. Stop talking. I don't want to hear your dirty stories. Li Shuang suddenly yelled at me. And I was surprised to find that there were tears in Li Shuang's eyes. What on earth had she gone through to become so sensitive and irritable? I was completely puzzled. Looking at Li Shuang trembling all over and sobbing, I felt a surge of pity in my heart. I walked to the table, got some tissues for Li Shuang and handed them to her. Vice President Li, don't cry. I'm sorry. It's my fault. Please wipe your tears. I hate seeing women cry the most. Seeing Li Shuang crying in front of me, I felt like a sinner in an instant. Li Shuang glared at me fiercely, then suddenly snatched the paper from my hand and used it to wipe his face. Li Shuang looked like a hedgehog covered with thorns at this moment. And the expression on his face said, keep away from strangers. In order not to anger her again, I had to sit opposite her. Vice President Li, please eat quickly and try my cooking. I said with a chuckle. Li Shuang glared at me and dropped the paper in his hand. Then she picked up the chopsticks on the table without saying a word. It seemed that she was sulking with me. This was the first time I saw such a weird side of Li Shuang. Chapter 28. She is different. Li Shuang picked up the dishes without saying a word and didn't even look up at me. For a moment, the air was very quiet, so quiet that it made my scalp tingle. Faced with such silence from Li Shuang, I really couldn't sit still. Vice President Li, what do you think of me? Before I could finish my words, Li Shuang raised his face and glared at me fiercely. Han Ming, can you drink? When I heard Li Shuang ask this, I felt confused. Before I could answer, Li Shuang stood up suddenly, limped to the refrigerator, and took out a bottle of red wine. Didn't you say sorry to me? Come on, drink this bottle of wine. Li Shuang said, putting the bottle of red wine in front of me. I was stunned when I heard her say this. I sincerely doubt whether I dug up Li Shuang's ancestral grave in my previous life, that's why she abused me like this. Vice President Li, this is a bottle. I said in surprise. Li Shuang, however, acted as if he didn't care. I know it's one bottle. Is there anything wrong with that? Li Shuang said with a deliberately innocent look. I looked at the red wine in front of me and felt like dying. Why, aren't you a special forces soldier? Aren't you very awesome? How come you can't even handle a bottle of red wine? Today I have fully experienced Li Shuang's aggressiveness. Alas, how could God give her such a beautiful face and such a sexy and graceful figure? I can't even hate her. I sighed secretly in my heart. Vice President Li, this wine is too expensive. I think you should keep it for yourself. I took a look at the bottle and it turned out to be 1982 Laffit. He politely rejected Li Shuang's request. When Li Shuang heard me say this, his face suddenly fell. Han Ming, if you finish this bottle of wine today, all our previous grievances will be written off. Li Shuang said with a proud look on his face. Really? An expectant look immediately flashed across my face as I looked at Li Shuang. This is a good deal. I thought to myself. Vice President Li, is everything you said true? I looked at Li Shuang with an eager look on my face. When have I ever broken my promise? Li Shuang sneered and rolled his eyes at me. Okay. That's what you said. The past is wiped out. Since he is so straightforward, how could I be nervous? Without saying a word, I picked up the bottle of red wine on the table. It's just a bite. When I was stationed in the wild, I lived a life of eating meat in big mouthfuls. This little bottle of wine means nothing to me. Li Shuang has underestimated my ability. Thinking of this, I immediately used a corkscrew to open the cork of the red wine. With a bang, the cork popped out of the bottle. A strong aroma of wine wafted to my face. It takes a long time, and the fragrance is so strong. I narrowed my eyes slightly, leaned over to the bottle and sniffed it with an intoxicated look on my face. I finished it in one gulp. It's really a waste of the gifts from heaven. I sighed secretly in my heart. Li Shuang looked at me and said unhappily, "What are you hesitating about? Are you going to drink it or not?" I raised my head and took a look at Li Shuang's beautiful face. Oh, I don't know when she will change her bad temper. It's such a waste of her face. I picked up the bottle of red wine, took a deep breath, then tilted my head back and opened my mouth. The red wine in the bottle flowed into my mouth. A sweet yet spicy smell of wine filled my throat. The cold red wine slid down my throat and poured into my stomach. In a short while, half the bottle was gone. There was no reaction on my face. Li Shuang, who was standing nearby, was a little uneasy. I squinted my eyes and watched the changes in his facial expressions. As I watched her expression change from contempt at first to shock later, I felt a sense of pride in my heart. Ha! I once drank 5 kilograms of erguitu in one go. This little red wine is just like a drink to me. After a while, the bottle of red wine in my hand was empty. As the last drop of liquid dripped into my throat, I burped with a satisfied look on my face. Vice President Li, you have to keep your word. I said with a smile as I poured the red wine bottle down, and there was nothing left in it. Li Shuang was so angry that his face turned pale and he clenched his fists secretly. Okay, you're awesome. Li Shuang snorted at me. But she actually walked to the refrigerator and took out a bottle of red wine. Seeing his actions, I felt confused. She won't regret letting me drink another bottle. I was surprised when I thought of this. Just like red wine is just a drink to me, but my stomach can't hold up even after drinking 2 bottles. Li Shuang placed the bottle of red wine in front of me. Vice President Li, what do you mean? I pointed at the red wine bottle and looked at her suspiciously. Since you finished a bottle of wine, your previous deeds are written off. Then I will also finish a bottle of wine now, and my previous deeds will also be written off. Li Shuang looked at me stubbornly and said. When I heard Li Shuang say this, I felt mixed emotions. But before I could say anything, Li Shuang had already opened the bottle. Vice President Li, what do you mean? You don't have to drink. I won't tell anyone about you. I saw him about to pick up the bottle of wine, so I immediately pulled her back. Li Shuang suddenly gave me a blank look and pushed me away harshly. I am a rule-abiding person. We have to be fair. Since you are a soldier, I believe you can keep your word. Hearing what Li Shuang said, I couldn't help but be shocked. I didn't expect Li Shuang to say such a thing. My opinion of her has changed a lot. Li Shuang is like a big box filled with many secrets, waiting for me to discover her different sides again and again. Don't stop me, or I'll never let you go. Li Shuang pointed at me, gave me a cold warning, then raised his head and drank in big gulps. The deep red liquid flowed into her cherry mouth. The outline of her upturned face had soft lines and delicate features. Under the light, she had a kind of free and easy beauty. I couldn't help but be shocked by Li Shuang's attitude. At this moment, Li Shuang exuded a unique underworld quality. I couldn't help but think of the words, sons and daughters of the Jianghu, and a sense of admiration arose in my heart. She nearly choked several times and almost stopped drinking, but she held on firmly. I was deeply impressed by Li Shuang and I discovered a different side of her. Chapter 29, Pleading for Mercy. I looked at the bright smile on Sun Ying's face, and a sense of guilt rose in my heart involuntarily. Do I really need to use Sun Ying? I feel a little guilty. But at this moment, another voice in my body was fighting with me again. Han Ming, have you forgotten the insults those people have inflicted on you? Only by becoming stronger can you protect the people you want to protect and challenge those who look down on you. Listening to their voice in my head, my heart became more determined. That's right. Only if I become strong enough, I won't be afraid of Li Yongqiang and the others. I said secretly in my heart. Brother Han, what's going on? Sun Ying saw that I was silent for a long time and didn't say anything. She thought I was embarrassed and didn't dare to speak, so she deliberately urged me. I looked into Sun Ying's eyes, which were as clear as water, and looked into her eyes sincerely. Xiaoying, I want to start a company. I said to Sun Ying seriously. When Sun Ying heard me say this, a look of surprise flashed across her face. I guess she didn't expect that I would have such an idea. Brother Han, what? You want to start a company? Sun Ying looked at me with an expression of disbelief. I nodded solemnly, yes, I want to start a company. If you always work as someone else's employee, you will never get ahead. I had no choice but to stand up and make a name for myself. Only then are you qualified to negotiate with Li Yongqiang. Thinking of Li Yongqiang's bad attitude towards the boss's wife, I felt angry and couldn't help but clench my fists. Xiaoying, I know that starting a company is not an easy thing, but I am determined to run a good company. However, you also know my current situation. I am penniless, so, can I ask your grandfather for a loan? The most difficult problem I am facing now is the lack of startup capital. After hearing what I said, Sun Ying looked at me in confusion. But why did you choose to start a company at this time? Brother Han, have you already investigated the market in advance? Sun Ying is from the School of Business Administration, so she is very sensitive to the business aspect. After hearing Sun Ying's words, I did not back down. Xiaoying, doing business is gambling. You have to take risks to get higher returns. I think you should understand this principle. In order to convince Sun Ying, I continued to talk to her. Brother Han, what you said is indeed right, but have you decided what kind of company you want to start? Sun Ying tilted her head and looked at me in confusion. Virtual game entertainment company. I said indifferently. When Sun Ying heard what I said, a look of shock flashed across her face. Sun Ying shouted in confusion. Sun Ying's surprise was within my expectations. I chuckled and then slowly explained to her. I've already figured out what our game will be about. It's going to be about special forces. This has been a dream of mine that has not been realized for many years. I want to promote the special forces profession and get more boys involved. After hearing what I said, Sun Ying fell into deep thought. Xiaoying, do you also think I'm daydreaming? I looked at Sun Ying, who kept her head down and refused to speak, and asked helplessly. Sun Ying looked at the sad look in my eyes, and a trace of guilt immediately appeared on her face. Brother Han, that's not what I meant. Sun Ying quickly explained to me. I was just thinking about the feasibility of this project. Xiaoying, I only ask you one thing, do you believe me? I stared at Sun Ying with burning eyes. During these days of knowing Sun Ying, I found that she is a pure and simple girl with a very upright character. She is a friend worth making close friends with. Although sometimes a man and a woman are alone in a room, as a normal man, if I see her wearing revealing clothes, I will also have some impure thoughts about her. When Sun Ying heard me ask this, she nodded immediately. Of course I believe you. You've helped me so many times. Hearing Sun Ying say this, I couldn't help but feel relieved. It seems that kindness will never be let down, I sighed in my heart. Xiaoying, I just want to borrow money from your grandfather to fulfill my dream. If my company is successful, I can run away with my boss's wife. Thinking of this, I become more determined. Borrow? Brother Han, do you know what it means if you lose the bet? Seeing my firm attitude, Sun Ying tried to persuade me anxiously. I understand, but I, Han Ming, can still afford the gamble. I said, patting my chest firmly. If I lose this bet, the worst that can happen is that I have to work for the rest of my life to pay off the debt, I thought to myself. But that is only the last resort, and I always believe that I will not be forced into that desperate situation. Seeing how persistent I was, Sun Ying became a little shaken. If you really want me and Grandpa to borrow money to start a company, then both of us have to go. When I heard Sun Ying's request, I nodded without hesitation. Of course I'll go with you. After all, it takes a lot of money to start a company. Why did you get involved if you knew it would cost a huge sum of money? The business world is like a battlefield. There are risks everywhere. Brother Han, I really don't want to see you take risks. Seeing Sun Ying looking so worried, I immediately grabbed her hand. When Sun Ying saw me holding her, a look of surprise flashed across her face. Xiaoyin, believe me, I, Han Ming, will definitely succeed. My eyes darkened and I said with a determined look on my face. When Sun Ying looked at me and said this, the look in her eyes changed slightly. Okay, I'll call Grandpa and ask him to make an appointment so we can meet and talk about this matter. After Sun Ying finished speaking, she saw a happy smile finally showing on my face, and she also looked happy. I hugged Sun Ying in my arms and excitedly kissed her forehead. Sun Ying chuckled and actually hugged my waist. It seems that Sun Ying is interested in me. Seeing Sun Ying's behavior, I felt guilty. My Han Ming's charm is still so great. I sighed in my heart. Sun Ying and I sat on the sofa, and I talked to her about my ideas and creativity. After all, Sun Ying is a business school student, so I believe in her acumen when it comes to money. After listening to my story, she immediately persuaded me. Although creativity is good, it requires the assistance of a team. A company needs different voices. Listening to Sun Ying's chatter, I almost fell asleep again. Chapter 30 Negotiation. With my insistence, Sun Ying finally agreed to my request. When I lay in bed at night, my heart was filled with excitement and I was secretly planning my future blueprint. I got up early the next morning. I haven't resigned from the company yet and I'm still Li Shuang's bodyguard and driver. When I went out, Sun Ying was still asleep. I walked into Sun Ying's room and was stunned by the erotic scene before me. Sun Ying had kicked off the quilt on her body during the night. Her body was lying on the bed in a spread eagle position. A head of thick long hair frames a pretty sleeping face. And she was only wearing a halter dress. The snow-white and tender skin looks very attractive. Under the suspender skirt, a pair of slender legs overlapped together, outlining a charming curve. Looking at such an erotic scene, I couldn't help but swallow my saliva. Suddenly Sun Ying's body moved. I was startled and prepared to run out. But Sun Ying did not open her eyes. She just smacked her rosy little lips, then turned over and continued to sleep soundly. Now her sexy back curve was revealed before my eyes. I looked at her smooth back, her perky buttocks, and her curled legs, and my heart was beating violently. I couldn't help but walk up to Sun Ying. She seemed to have had a very beautiful dream, and there was even a sweet smile on the corner of her mouth. Looking at her cute sleeping face like a child, a strong desire suddenly arose in my heart. I really want to kiss her plump, rosy little lips. A voice appeared in my heart. No, Brother Han Ming. Sun Ying suddenly muttered. I was frightened at once and thought she woke up. Looking at Sun Ying's sleeping face with lingering fear, the fire of desire in my heart was extinguished. I looked up at the time and it was time to go. I lowered my head, gently kissed Sun Ying on her forehead, and left. When I arrived at Li Shuang's house, I rang the doorbell. After a while, the door opened. Li Shuang was already dressed neatly in a blue and white professional suit, showing his maturity and competence. Vice President Li. I looked at Li Shuang, feeling a little guilty. I don't know if she still remembers her crazy behavior last night. You are on time. Li Shuang looked at me twice and then said coldly. I couldn't help but feel relieved. Luckily Li Shuang didn't pick a fight with me. Come in. I was thinking when Li Shuang suddenly pulled me into the room. I was stunned for a moment, and many guesses emerged in my mind. What is Li Shuang going to do? I felt uneasy. She won't do anything bad to me again. I am really scared of Li Shuang. Vice President Li, it's time to go to work soon. I'd better wait for you in the car. I quickly found an excuse to leave. Stop. Li Shuang suddenly called me coldly. I couldn't help but frown. I didn't know what she wanted to do again, and I couldn't help feeling distressed. I have something to talk to you about. Li Shuang said coldly. Hearing Li Shuang say this, I turned around and looked at her curiously. Li Shuang was still sitting on the sofa, so I followed him. Vice President Li, what do you want to talk to me about? I looked at Li Shuang puzzledly. The woman in front of me looked completely different from when she was drunk last night. I was a little surprised. Which face was the real her? The person who kidnapped me yesterday was the boss of Universal Entertainment. Li Shuang suddenly looked at me and said. I was a little surprised after hearing what she said. Why would the boss of the entertainment company kidnap her? I wondered secretly in my heart. Are you curious about why they kidnapped me? Before I could even open my mouth, Li Shuang had already expressed my inner thoughts. I have to admit that Li Shuang has very high insight. Their company recently encountered a debt crisis, so the boss came up with a nasty idea. They followed me and took some indecent photos of me, and used them to threaten me to shoot AV for them. When I heard Li Shuang say this, I was shocked. Such behavior is truly abominable. As a soldier, I will never allow such a thing to happen. Vice President Li, I understand. Are you afraid that they will come to cause trouble again? Don't worry, I will always protect you. Li Shuang chuckled and said, why don't we discuss a condition? When I heard Li Shuang say this, I felt confused. Vice President Li, I don't understand what you mean. I can give you money, as much as you want. What? Hearing Li Shuang say this, I was extremely shocked. Li Shuang actually wanted to give me money, and said I could give him as much as I wanted. The idea of starting a company suddenly came to my mind, and I just happened to be short of some money. Li Shuang looked at me with a hint of hesitation in her eyes, and the corners of her mouth couldn't help but raise a meaningful smile. What do you think? Do you agree? Li Shuang asked me tentatively. Vice President Li, what do you want me to do for you? I looked at Li Shuang puzzledly. Li Shuang is a businesswoman. Since she can ask me that, I think what she wants me to do must not be simple. I want you to go to the entertainment company and get back my indecent photos. Li Shuang said word by word. I could vaguely feel a hint of anger in her eyes. How about it? Han Ming, are you okay with it? Li Shuang said to me with burning eyes. When I heard her say this, I couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. This is indeed not an easy task. Vice President Li, you want me to go to the entertainment company alone to retrieve the indecent photos? I looked at Li Shuang suspiciously. I don't want more people to know about this. Li Shuang said impatiently. Han Ming, if you can help me get back the indecent photos, how much do you want? Give me a price. Li Shuang said this and generously threw a check in front of me. As I looked at the check, all I could think about was the startup capital I needed to start my company. After hesitating for a while, I finally made up my mind. For the sake of my boss lady and to have a chance to succeed, I will take this gamble even if it costs my life. I swore to myself. Okay, I promise you. I said and picked up the check. When Li Shuang saw that I agreed, a hint of joy appeared in his eyes. I knew you would agree. Li Shuang laughed heartily. However, the boss of that entertainment company is called Chen Hongda. He is cunning by nature and has connections with both the black and white worlds. You have to be careful. Li Shuang stood up and walked to a safe nearby, and took out a file bag from it. Li Shuang threw the file bag in front of me. This is Chen Hongda's personal information. Go back and take a good look at it. Chapter 31 Fired. I took the file bag in my hand. Okay, Vice President Li, I understand. Han Ming, I believe in your ability and hope you won't let me down. As Li Shuang spoke, he actually stood up and walked in front of me. Looking at Li Shuang standing in front of me, smelling the strong scent of her perfume, that mature and sexy femininity makes me intoxicated for the rest of my life. I almost couldn't control myself and had a physical reaction. Vice President Li, are we going to the company? I quickly changed the subject and asked. Li Shuang looked at my embarrassed look, chuckled, and then she actually sat down next to me. Han Ming, are you afraid of me? Li Shuang looked at me with a puzzled look and asked. After Li Shuang sat next to me, my heart started beating even faster. Vice President Li, you misunderstood. I'm not afraid, it's just that we are in a boss-subordinate relationship, so we have to keep a certain distance. I quickly explained to Li Shuang. Oh. Is that so? Li Shuang deliberately put on a look of sudden enlightenment. But then she tilted her head and looked at me. Then why are you so close to my sister-in-law? Li Shuang suddenly asked. After hearing Li Shuang's question, I couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. But then he immediately reacted and waved to Li Shuang. Vice President Li, you really misunderstood. I really have no relationship with the boss's wife. I hurriedly explained to Li Shuang. In short, no matter what happens, you must deny it, otherwise Li Shuang will find evidence against you. Li Shuang looked at me thoughtfully and said, let's go to the company. After saying that, she stood up and left me. The big stone in my heart finally fell to the ground. After getting in the car, Li Shuang turned back into the arrogant and cold female boss. In my mind, I kept thinking, how can I get Li Shuang's indecent photos back from the entertainment company? Since the entertainment company's boss Li Hongda was able to secretly take indecent photos of Li Shuang. This proves that they had planned this for a long time, so they hid the indecent photos in a very secluded place. After much thought, I thought I could only ask my police friend for help. After a while, the car stopped downstairs of the company. After parking the car, I followed Li Shuang into the company. Colleagues who came to work all looked terrified when they saw Li Shuang. It seems that Li Shuang's nickname Mi Shui Shitai in the company is not for nothing. After a while we took the elevator upstairs. When I arrived at Li Shuang's office, I found that the boss was actually sitting in Li Shuang's boss chair. Why did the boss come to Li Shuang's office? I was confused. But when the boss looked up and looked at me with disgust, I seemed to understand something. Boss. After entering the office, I quickly bowed to the boss and greeted him. But the boss ignored me and still had a haughty look on his face. Li Shuang also noticed something strange about his boss. Brother, why are you in my office? Li Shuang looked at the boss curiously, then asked puzzledly. The boss suddenly stood up from his seat and pointed at me with an angry look on his face. Xiao Shuang, I want you to fire Han Ming immediately. The boss pointed at me angrily and yelled. Seeing his boss so angry, Li Shuang was stunned for a moment. It seems that the boss is so furious, probably because of what happened at the drinking party yesterday. Boss, I don't know what I did wrong to make you so angry. I asked the boss with a puzzled look on my face. You little bastard, I've been providing you with food and shelter since you were discharged from the army. This is how you repay me now. Do you know what will happen if you offend a gangster boss? The boss grabbed my collar and started scolding me. Li Shuang was standing aside, watching the boss pointing at me with anger, his face also blank. She still doesn't know why the boss hit me. But the boss did me a favor, so when he hit me, I clenched my fists and endured it. Brother, if you have something to say, just say it nicely. Why do you have to fight in the company? What if someone else sees us? Li Shuang saw the boss swinging the stick beside him and about to hit me, so he immediately stood in front of me. Brother, calm down. What happened? Li Shuang was totally confused and asked anxiously. Li Shuang, get out of their way and don't protect this brat. I'm going to beat him to death today. The boss seemed very angry and pushed Li Shuang away. Seeing that his stick was about to hit me on the head, I immediately reached out and grabbed the stick in his hand. Boss, let's talk nicely, why do you have to use force? I saw Li Shuang fall to the ground, his knees seemed to be scraped and bleeding, I couldn't help but feel angry. It would be a shame if such long, smooth legs were left with scars. I secretly felt sorry for it. You, Han Ming, you are rebelling. The boss felt angry when he saw me blocking his stick. Boss, if you have anything to say, just say it nicely. Why do you have to use force? I said to the boss coldly. Han Ming, if it weren't for you last night, how could we have angered the big brother? The boss glared at me viciously. So he came here just for this matter. I understood immediately. Boss, I really didn't call the police last night. I said to my boss solemnly. If not you? Who else? Does anyone know that we are in City Hotel? The boss glared at me and suddenly spat at me. Luckily I reacted in time and dodged. Brother, what are you talking about? Li Shuang also got up from the ground at this time. Xiao Shuang, don't interfere in this matter. The boss said to Li Shuang with a cold glare. When Li Shuang heard his boss say this, he became even more confused. Okay. You are a special forces soldier, I can't beat you. But I am the boss of this company, I have the right to fire you. The boss sneered and said to me. When Li Shuang heard that his boss was going to fire him, he immediately became anxious. Brother, why do you want to fire Han Ming? Han Ming is my man, and I should decide whether he stays or leaves. When the boss heard Li Shuang say this, he was immediately furious. Xiao Shuang, have you also been fooled by his sweet words? The boss stomped his feet in anger. Brother, unless you give me enough reasons, I will not fire Han Ming. Li Shuang looked stubborn, holding his head high and talking to the boss relentlessly. The boss was so angry at Li Shuang that his face turned blue and he couldn't speak for a long time.